he didn't believe the prosecution was going to be able to present any evidence that proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Christine Lane had caused the death of her daughter. He said, quote, "This woman was a good mother. No one will come and say they ever saw this woman abuse her child or neglect her in any way," end quote. McDermott added that Christine Lane had hidden the body of her child, and then she had lied about it, but she'd panicked, and as a result, she'd made the worst decision of her life. Obviously, at this point, it's 1990, Wesley McDermott could not have been inspired by another defense lawyer, Jose Baez, as Baez would come later. But maybe Baez was inspired by Wesley McDermott, because Wesley McDermott pulled a page right out of Baez's Defending Casey Anthony book, right? McDermott said, quote, "When you tell that first lie, then you have to tell another and another and another. Christine Lane is not a perfect human being. We'll give you that. But at the same time, Christine Lane is not a murderer," end quote. On October 18th, the prosecutor, James Church, produced 8 photographs for the jury to look at. And these photographs showed the location where Eliza's body had been found. The pictures were sort of sequential. They started with the clearing away of brush, and then they showed the gradual removal of a small body from garbage bags. A small body that was clad in a pink parka and pink snow boots, lying face down. John Huther from the sheriff's office also testified that when Eliza had been reported missing, he'd asked her mother, Christine Lane, for something with her daughter's scent on it, which could be presented to the search dogs who were out there looking for Eliza. And Christine Lane had told him she had nothing because she'd washed everything that belonged to Eliza the night of February 1st, and nothing from Eliza's crib would work because the little girl had spent the night in Christine's bed. And that says everything to me right there. You claimed that when you woke up on the morning of February 2nd at 4 a.m., Eliza was in her crib, tangled up in her crib sheets. But if she spent the night in your bed and you couldn't give the crib sheets to the scent dogs because she hadn't been sleeping in them, what? A medical examiner named Dr. John Maines testified that he'd been the first person to examine Eliza's body in the brush pile where it was found, and he felt there could be some truth to Christine Lane's story based on the way the blood had settled in Eliza's body. Maines told the jury that he had removed the clothing from Eliza's left leg to examine the coloration pattern, and this would have revealed the position that her body had been in for several hours after death. He concluded that Eliza had been laying face down, and in Lane's statements to the police, she had claimed that she'd found her daughter laying face down on her pillow. However, Maine's conclusion, it didn't rule out scenarios that were different from Christine Lane's version of events, such as if she had taken her own daughter's life and then left her face down for several hours before disposing of her body. And the medical examiner testified that Maines really didn't know what he was talking about because he had just looked at Eliza's leg and he couldn't really determine a true blood pooling pattern based on that one area of the body. But then Dr. Lucy B. Rourke, a neuropathologist from Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, who you might remember from our discussion on the Ellen Greenberg case, she testified that Christine Lane's claims were not consistent with her own medical findings. Now remember, Christine Lane had said that when she found Eliza, the child's legs were so straight and stiff they would not bend. Dr. Rourke told the jury that what Lane was describing was an advanced state of rigor mortis, but by that stage of rigor, the blood would have pooled in a fixed pattern. If Lane's description was accurate, the blood pattern would have shown that Eliza had been laying face down with her legs stretched out straight, but Dr. Rourke had found that the blood pooling pattern had become fixed when Eliza was face down, but with her legs bent, not straight. The medical examiner who had performed Eliza's autopsy also chimed in to say that rigor mortis in young children is less extreme than what Christine Lane had described, and he testified that Eliza's legs would have easily bent if pressured. Dr. Rourke also said that a pillow could have been placed over Eliza's face to smother her, and the absence of marks or evidence of trauma around Eliza's nose and mouth absolutely did not rule out the possibility of smothering. Dr. Rourke talked about two small scrapes she'd found on the inside of Eliza's right cheek, saying, quote, "It suggested to me that there may have been some external pressure on this child's cheek or face shortly before she died, end quote. Dr. Humphrey Germaniak, who was the ME that had performed Eliza's autopsy, he told the jury that there was literally no chance that Eliza had suffocated accidentally, saying, quote, "In a child who is nearly 2 years old, who has no physical defects and is healthy, when such a child does become entangled, they beat themselves free. Even smaller children, if placed face down, will instinctively turn their face to the side and will be able to breathe. It is not in the realm of possibility for a child who is free from physical defects and healthy to wrap itself up in blankets, so there has to be something else. And when you find a body hidden, that instantly raises suspicion," end quote. Dr. Germaniak had also examined Eliza's bed sheets and pillows from her crib, and he had found that they were all made from materials that could be easily breathed through. However, it would become more difficult to breathe through the pillows if force had been applied to them. Another doctor, Stephen Ludwig, who was a pediatrician at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, he testified that Eliza had been in excellent shape for her age, and he'd found out that she could pedal a tricycle at 23 months of age, which was something most children couldn't do until they were 3. Ludwig also said that even a child of average development would not be in danger of being smothered by entangled blankets because, quote, "The body is built for survival. That's why we don't hear about 23-month-olds smothering in pillows or blankets on any regular basis," end quote. He explained to the jury that a baby acquires certain reflexes to ensure its ability to breathe, and he explained that in the emergency room where he worked, they used a device called a papoose, which is basically a baby straitjacket, and they would be placed on small children to keep them still while they were getting stitches. Dr. Ludwig said, quote, "Many children at 23 months old squirm their way out of that, so their developmental skills are farther along in that case than we would like," end quote. Dr. Ludwig also testified that he had personally done several internet searches, several searches through software and websites looking for scientific literature that contained reports of children who were Eliza's age smothering themselves, and he had found 0 cases. On October 30th, Christine Lane took the stand to explain herself to the jury. She said she had made a big mistake when hiding the body of her daughter, and she knew it had been a mistake, but by the time she figured that out, it was too late. Lane said, quote, "Once I made the decision to hide her, I couldn't go back on that. I was terrified, and I didn't know what else I could do at that point. I've admitted that I made a mistake, but I did not cause the death of Eliza," end quote. Christine Lane explained that she'd been in shock when she'd found Eliza because she had never been that close to a dead body before. Which, listen, I'm going to interject here. I've been trying to stay unbiased, but I'm going to be less so as we go on in this video. So first point, I find it surprising that Christine Lane claimed that she was in shock, which you would expect, right? You'd expect someone to be in shock, but she was in shock because she'd never been that close to a dead body before. Not she was in shock because she was standing over the dead body of her child. And second point, if you're in shock because you're close to a dead body, which once again is understandable, do you proceed to then dress that dead body, wrap it up in garbage bags, and then walk a mile with it? Is that what shock does to you? You know, like if you're in shock because you're close to a dead body, you're probably going to want to not be close to that dead body. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, trying to be unbiased, but it's getting more difficult, especially because I know more about this case than you guys do yet, but we're going to get there. So by this time, 4 separate doctors had testified that Christine Lane's version of events could absolutely not have happened, and Eliza had been murdered. But the defense had a doctor of their own, who I guess was lucky enough to get that $1,000 that hadn't gone to Cyril Weck's useless role in this case. Dr. Daniel Stowers testified that Eliza had not been murdered. She had died from sudden infant death syndrome, which he acknowledged was something that usually happened in children under 6 months of age, but still, he was just going to go with it anyways. Dr. Stowers also told the jury that SIDS was an allergic reaction, and he claimed that Eliza's autopsy showed the same physical changes in her lungs, kidneys, and thymus glands as infants who had died from SIDS. Dr. Stowers said, quote, If somebody wants to be an academic and say it usually happens with younger children, I wouldn't argue with that. But as I said, this reaction can happen at any age. There's good anatomical evidence for allergic reaction. There's no evidence of anything else. End quote. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor, James Church, was able to get Dr. Stowers to admit that his explanation of what caused SIDS, which he claimed was an allergic reaction, that wasn't generally accepted by the medical community. And in fact, it was Dr. Stowers, like kind of his own theory, his own thing that he was going with. Church asked Stowers, quote, "Is there anyone else in the field of pathology who recognizes SIDS as a cause of death past the age of 1? End quote. To which Stowers admitted, not that he knew of. Dr. Stowers in this trial was claiming that SIDS was caused by an allergic reaction, and he saw changes in Eliza's organs that suggested this allergic reaction. But keep in mind, none of the other 4 medical experts, none of the other 4 pathologists who testified that Eliza had been murdered saw these changes in her organs. But, it's 2022 now. This was in 1990. It's 2022. So is there any supporting evidence that SIDS is caused by this allergic reaction which causes these changes in your organs? Let's investigate. So the unexpected and sudden death of a seemingly healthy baby has been seen for thousands and thousands of years. And in the late 1800s, it was thought to be caused by suffocation of bedding, the infant's clothes being too tight, or co-sleeping with parents. In 1898, it was suggested that these sudden infant death cases could be caused by an anomaly of the thymus, which was causing the thymus to become enlarged and press on the trachea. This theory declined in the early 1900s when it was proven to be false, and in the late 50s, 2 doctors working out of Cambridge proposed the theory that SIDS was caused by an allergic reaction to foreign protein found in cow's milk. However, it was also found later that cases of SIDS in children with allergic reactions were no more common than cases in children without allergic reactions. As time went on, other theories arose that SIDS could be caused by a viral infection, abnormal calcium metabolism, magnesium deficiency, botulism, stress, an allergy to mites in the child's home, heart conduction defects, carbon dioxide poisoning, hypothermia, hyperthermia, vitamin E deficiency, selenium deficiency, spinal hemorrhages, electrolyte imbalances, immune system failure, and so on and so forth. One of the most popular theories is the apnea theory, which was first proposed in 1972, but this study was done on 5 infants with no controls. 2 of these infants had died, and it was later proved that they'd been killed by their mother, which kind of threw that theory out. Today, it's generally believed and accepted that there's no one single cause of SIDS and that several factors come together in a given time and in a given baby to cause their tragic death. Oddly enough, though, on the same day that I was researching this portion of the video, an article came out reporting that earlier this month, scientists had published a study that claimed there was a particular enzyme which may be associated with a greater risk for SIDS. The study happened due to a popular theory that many SIDS deaths stemmed from the infant's inability to rouse themselves from sleep when they couldn't breathe, and some existing literature ties the neurotransmitter ACHE to arousal, and so deficits in ACHE could be linked to SIDS. Because the enzymes BCHE and ACHE modulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that allows you to breathe without thinking about it, it's been hypothesized that a deficit in the cholinergic system could be responsible for an abnormal level of one or both of these enzymes. Researchers looked at blood samples that were taken from infants who had died from SIDS, and they compared them to blood samples from healthy infants, and they found that the blood of the babies who had had SIDS contained lower levels of this enzyme BCHE. Obviously, this is all very new, just coming out, and the medical community isn't ready to jump on board yet, and many experts have already pointed out several flaws with this theory. But I thought it was interesting and timely, so I've attached the article in the description box if you want to give it a read. But basically, from all what we just talked about, we understand that we don't really know what causes SIDS or why some babies get it or suffer from it, and some don't. It's very tragic. It's very sad. Fortunately, with new education, new research, things like that, the number of SIDS deaths have fallen way down since the 1990s. But basically, what I want to say is this doctor who's claiming that Eliza had died from SIDS and SIDS was an allergic reaction, he's not correct. During closing statements, prosecutor James Church claimed that Lane was a liar who had hatched a plan to present her daughter's death as an abduction before she made the decision to hide Eliza's body in the woods. The clothes that Eliza was dressed in, her snow boots, her snow jacket, the whole mitten story, the brush pile that covered Eliza's body, which would have taken some time and effort to build, he claimed that this all showed Lane could not have gone through all of this without some forethought. On November 9th, Christine Lane was found guilty of manslaughter, and members of the jury later admitted that even after the testimony, they still didn't know what exactly had happened to Eliza or how she had died. Initially, 9 out of the 12 jurors had wanted to convict Christine Lane of murder, but the holdouts could not be convinced, so rather than have a hung jury, they agreed to compromise and go with the lower charge of manslaughter. Still, most of the jury members felt that Christine Lane had killed her daughter, although they didn't want to believe it had been on purpose. They thought maybe it had been an accident. Christine Lane sobbed for more than 10 minutes after the verdict was read, and then she was led away to await her sentencing hearing. Now, during her sentencing hearing, which took place on January 17, 1991, Judge Betty Friedlander sentenced Lane to the maximum, 15 years in prison. The judge said that she'd made the decision to go with the maximum sentence due to Lane's apparent lack of remorse and her calculated reactions and actions after Eliza's death. And the judge basically said, Eliza was the most innocent of victims. She couldn't have fought back. She couldn't have protected herself. You were supposed to protect her. And instead of treating your child with the respect that she deserved, you threw her into garbage bags and disposed of her like trash. After the sentencing, Eliza's grandmother, Sandra Bush, said, quote, "It wouldn't make a difference what sentence she got. It wouldn't be enough, especially for all the innocent people she caused pain and agony to," end quote. Christine Lane's attorney, Wesley McDermott, filed a notice to appeal within minutes of the sentencing, shaking his head and telling reporters, quote, "This girl didn't deserve the max, no matter what," end quote. McDermott felt that the harsh sentencing had something to do with the timing of Eliza's death, which had happened within weeks of the Harris family murders. He said that the killings had dealt the community more shock than it could deal with, saying, quote, "The verdict in this case, as well as the sentencing, reflects a need to extract some compensation," end quote. And once again, I'm going to interject here to say that I disagree with that statement. The majority of the jury was ready to find Christine Lane guilty of second-degree murder, and everyone on the jury thought she was responsible in some way for Eliza's death, even if it had been an accident. So clearly, this wasn't a community out on a witch hunt trying to get their pound of flesh. The people on the jury, I believe, acted reasonably and didn't let their emotions dictate their decision. On June 23, 1991, from behind bars at the Bedford Hills Maximum Security Prison, Christine Lane maintained her innocence in an interview with the Syracuse Herald. She said that she had remorse for lying, but not for Eliza's death, claiming, quote, "How can I have remorse for something I didn't do? I know for a fact that I didn't harm Eliza. I'm being punished for lying," end quote. She spoke to a reporter for more than 6 hours, and we got some great gems from that interview. Christine Lane dabbed at the tears in her eyes and said it was time for people to hear her side, saying, quote, "A lot of people have warned me against breaking my silence, but to me, I don't feel that I could lose any more. Losing Eliza was the worst. Anything that follows behind that isn't going to be as tragic. So me sitting and doing interviews, taking my chances on it's being damaging or not, that was a chance I was willing to take. I get tired of everybody making me out to be this, evil person when I know I'm not," end quote. The reporter asked Christine what she thought people were feeling when they found out that the same woman who had begged for her daughter's safe return did so while knowing that her child was already gone. Lane responded, quote, "Oh, I'm sure a lot of people were very, very disappointed. I'm not saying they don't have a right. I can understand the anger. I can understand a lot of that. End quote. She was asked if she understood why people would think she was a baby killer, to which she answered, sure, but two, I know that it's from my lie. That's the why. But I guess I had figured that the medical authorities could determine for sure that what I was saying about finding Eliza dead in the crib was the truth. End quote. So my question to Christine Lane would have been, if you were so sure that the medical experts could tell the difference between Eliza suffocating on her blankets and you smothering her, why were you not so sure of this before you made the dumbass decision to throw your child into garbage bags and bury her in the woods? Wouldn't you have been confident that even if people didn't initially believe you, the medical experts would be able to scientifically prove that what you were saying was true? That would be my question. Christine Lane went on to say, quote, so I'm trying to explain to people what I did. I'm trying to help them understand why I lied. I have a reason for that. In my heart, I feel I have a reason for that. If they don't believe it after I tell it, then they can go with that. But I want to give them the chance to at least hear me out. End quote. The reporter told Christine Lane that the major problem with her asking people to believe her was that she had destroyed her credibility. And she responded, quote, that's true. But like I said, again, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because every time that anybody reports something about me, they turn it around to make it look bad. I think the media made me out to be a bad person. End quote. The reporter responded perfectly, bless his heart, saying, quote, you were made out to be a liar, and you were a liar. End quote. To which Lane responded, quote, true, but I'm not somebody who would make up one lie after the other either. End quote. But isn't that exactly what your attorney claimed in the opening statements of your trial? That you lied once, and so you had to lie again and again and again. And thankfully, while I was, yelling at my computer, I realized the reporter basically brings up this same point, telling Christine Lane that it wasn't just one lie. She told a lot of lies. She responded, quote, okay, but we're talking about one lie that kept snowballing. You're talking about one time. I realized that this was a very extensive lie, but what I'm saying is that it had not made my whole life a lie either. But that's what they were trying to make me out to be, an extensive liar. And I'm not an extensive liar. End quote. I want to go back and address what her attorney had claimed, that Christine's pleas for Eliza's safe return during the February 8th press conference were not her words. I personally believe they were her words. I can't find a video of that press conference anywhere, but the ID docuseries, Village of the Damned, they do play a clip of it. And it's clear to me that she isn't reading anything. She sounds very natural. So unless she memorized that whole thing, she didn't get a script. She didn't get, word for word what to say. She did probably receive guidelines, which is very typical. But even if she had been coached, it doesn't matter. She talked to newspapers. She wrote letters to family members saying all of these same things, that Eliza had been taken, that she wanted her back, that Eliza was her life. She didn't know if she could go on without her. She gave an interview talking about buying Eliza birthday presents the same day she confessed to hiding her body. To me, that goes beyond lying. You didn't need to do all that. No one told you to hang out with reporters and be all extra, right? You could have kept to yourself. You could have kept your head low, knowing in your heart that eventually people were going to find out what you did. You mailed yourself a mitten, for God's sake, so that people would stop looking for Eliza in the woods, because you didn't want them to find her body, which you had hidden in the woods, because you probably didn't want them to find out how she had died. That's just my opinion. Don't come for me, but it goes beyond lying. It's calculating. It's manipulative. It's cruel. Downright psychopathic, if you ask me. There wasn't just one lie that was like an extensive lie. There wasn't just one lie that you built upon. You lied over and over and over again to everybody. So the reporter goes on to ask Christine Lane, quote, how do we know that the crocodile tears from February of last year over the loss of Eliza are not being repeated now, end quote. And Lane answered, quote, I don't know. You're trying to say that whatever I say is not going to be accepted by people. I just believe in saying what I have to say. I'm sorry if people don't understand me. There's a lot of things that I don't understand either, but I'm trying to understand them. Anybody who has lost a child or anybody that's been close to them will at least have some knowledge of what I'm going through. I don't feel that any of my tears were ever any kind of act. The public may have thought it to be, but regardless, they still revolved around the fact of me not having Eliza. Regardless of back when I was on TV, even though that was a lie, still, it does not mean that my tears weren't for something. They were for something. They were for her, end quote. And this statement, I can get behind. I can be fair. I can believe it, even if Christine Lane had caused the death of her daughter. I truly don't think it was intentional. I think she was sick. She was tired. She was stressed because she couldn't get a job. She didn't have a car. She was running out of money. And maybe Eliza wouldn't go to sleep that night. Maybe it had been a long day and Eliza was being super hyperactive that night and she just wouldn't go down. And Christine just wanted to rest so she could feel better, so she could sleep and forget everything, all her problems. But Eliza wasn't cooperating, so Christine Lane lashed out. I'm sure in the aftermath of that blinding rage, Christine was absolutely devastated and crushed because I do believe she loved her daughter. So yes, it's very possible that when she was crying on TV, she was crying because she was sad about what had happened to Eliza. But she still covered it up. She still lied. She still let hundreds of people search for a child that was not missing for hundreds, thousands of hours out there in all sorts of weather, getting injured, getting exposure. She took resources that could have been used in the pursuit of an actual crime. It's unacceptable, and there's no excuse for anything she did. The reporter then asked Christine Lane about the mitten. Like, how did she come up with this idea to say she found a mitten at the bottom of the driveway? Lane said, quote, "The investigators were asking me what Eliza had been wearing, and I looked around the living room and saw her mitten there, and I said I'd found it. Once the lie began, it just kept going and going and going, and it was easier. It was easier to believe that she was just missing than it was to say she was actually gone," end quote. Okay, so I'm back to not believing her again. She's saying that she did not plan to tell the police that she found a mitten, that it wasn't premeditated, so she just happened to be sitting with the cops in her living room and boom, it's one single pink mitten right there. How convenient. Where was the other mitten at the time? It couldn't have been in plain sight because then later, when you mailed it to yourself, the police would be like, didn't we see 2 pink mittens in your apartment? In my opinion, before the police showed up, maybe even before she called them, Christine Lane separated those 2 pink mittens, knowing she was going to claim she had only found one, knowing she was going to have it in her hand when law enforcement arrived. And then at the end of that statement, Christine says it was easier to believe that she was alive. And so the reporter asked Christine, like, are you trying to say that you actually came to believe that Eliza was missing and not dead? To which Lane responded, quote, "Yeah, especially after the first night. We went in and they called in Phil Jordan, the psychic, and he sat right there and said he had been out for hours driving around the block and he had one of Eliza's pictures and he came back and assured us that she was alive, that someone had her. I wanted to believe that she was being taken care of. So yes, it was easy to believe that. I didn't want to believe she was dead," end quote. Okay, so you hid your daughter's dead body, but then a psychic told you she was alive. So yeah, of course. I mean, the psychic knows best. How was it easy to believe Eliza was not dead when you had just hidden her body? The fuck? The reporter's follow-up question was pretty much just that. He said, quote, "But you must have remembered what happened. You must have remembered leaving her body in the woods," end quote. Christine Lane replied, quote, "Yeah, at times, you'd get a flash where it came back, the reality of it. But then when I would do that, somebody would show up or I'd get a phone call, so then I'd snap back into believing she was just taken," end quote. Okay, this makes sense. So it's not your fault that you're a lying liar. It's not your fault that you continued to lie. It's everyone else's fault. All those people who are out there trying to find your baby, trying to comfort you by reassuring you that Eliza was still alive out there somewhere, trying to give you hope, it was their fault that you believed your own lies as much as they did. It doesn't carry, man, the audacity. Christine Lane continued, quote, "The people that judged me, that convicted me, they don't know the type of person I am. The people who know me know that I could never do this. They know how I was with Eliza. They know how important she was to me. She begins crying at this point, and Christine Lane continues on to say, quote, "The night that I put her to bed, it was like any other typical night. And then all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and she's gone. I mean, it's a shock. It's an insecurity that I have, that I just feel that people don't trust me. And then it comes into my head that, geez, you've always had to prove yourself, even when you don't do nothing wrong. All of a sudden now I feel like, how am I going to explain this? I don't even know what happened. Now I find her like this. How am I going to explain this to somebody? Maybe too, because it was my idea to put the blanket in there. This is an adult blanket that I'm putting in there with a child in a crib, things like that. They're going to make people say, why'd you do something like that? Don't you know they make infant blankets? Stuff like that. I had a thought, to call. I went to call the ambulance and I started to dial. And while I'm dialing, the thought comes into my head that nobody's going to believe me that she died by herself. So when that thought hit me, I put the phone back down." End quote. Okay, this could be true. She could have actually felt this way. She could have been afraid that because she was a young mother and her circumstances weren't perfect, she would be judged. We see it happen every day in these current crime cases, every day. But it could also be true that Christine Lane caused the death of her own daughter unintentionally, and maybe she was paranoid that no one would think she was telling the truth because she wasn't. At the end of her interview, Christine Lane announced that she could be paroled within 4 years. And when that happened, she looked forward to getting out, getting back to her life, and having more children, saying, quote, "I want to. Nobody can stop me from having them." End quote. That's true. That is true. Very reminiscent of Casey Anthony, right? It really is. I do think Jose Baez probably studied this case when he was representing Casey Anthony. Because when lawyers go to represent a certain case, they look into the circumstances of that case. What kind of case is this? What's being tried here? And then they'll look up similar cases in case law to see what kind of arguments were used by the defense attorneys. So it's just so very similar, even down to the part where, Christine Lane's flouting this in the face of everybody, like, yeah, my daughter's dead, but I'm going to have more kids and you can't stop me. You can't do anything about it. And honestly, I wish I could tell you what Christine Lane is up to now. Did she actually get paroled after only 4 years? Did she go on to have all those babies that she was dead set on having? I have no idea. I can't find any sign of her anywhere. I even checked obituaries. So what I think happened is she probably did get out. She probably was paroled after a shorter amount of time. She probably changed her name and then went on with her life. Most likely she moved out of the area. But if anybody has like software that they can look this stuff up on, or somebody in the area, or you are familiar with this case and you know what happened to her, let us know in the comments. Obviously, I'm not trying to send anybody after her, but I'd like to know, did she serve the 15 years or did she get out after 4? I mean, final thoughts, closing thoughts. I definitely think that Christine Lane had something to do with the death of her child, but I do not think she did it on purpose. I don't think she premeditated the murder of little Eliza. I think it was definitely an accident. Single motherhood can be stressful. I've been there. Being a young mother can be stressful. I understand what she's talking about when she says she's afraid no one's going to believe her, because I was there myself, for many years, that I was constantly being judged. If my daughter, got dropped off at her grandmother's house and her shirt was dirty because she like ate a donut in the car or something, I would get a look as if like, are you not washing this child? Are you not putting clean clothes on her? It's not like kids just get dirty. And I don't think I would have gotten the same reactions if I'd been an older mother who had already been established and who already had like her life figured out and worked out, because I certainly didn't at that point. So I understand those roadblocks. I understand those trials. And I also understand being so tired, being so stressed, being so like at the end of your rope, and your child picks those days to, have the most energy and do the most. And sometimes you feel like you're going to snap, man. Sometimes you feel like, yeah, you might hurt your kid. Like you might shake your kid, or you want to slap your kid or something. Like I've felt that. Okay. I don't want to hear any mother say they have never felt that. Now, do we do it? No. You talk yourself down. You leave the room. You put your kid in the crib and let her cry it out and go into a different room so that you're not tempted to follow through on these irrational thoughts that are being driven by exhaustion and stress and pressure from every angle. You leave the room. Christine Lane didn't leave the room, in my opinion. So many mothers and fathers don't leave the room. Um, they don't have that impulse control. They choose not to, or it just happens in a flash. I don't know. But it's not as bad as intentionally murdering your child, but it's still bad. It's still wrong. It's still illegal. It's still tragic. It's your own child. And you still have to, face the consequences for that, especially considering the fact that she lied. She hid her daughter's body. She made everybody think that Eliza had been kidnapped. She caused an emotional, like, whirlwind, an emotional volcano, tornado on everybody around her who became attached to Eliza, who felt like, if this was my child, I'd want somebody out there looking for her, so I'm going to be out there looking for her. They devoted their time, their energy, they gave their hearts to this case. And, to find out that you knew where Eliza was the whole time. I think the fact that she hid Eliza's body after was a big driving factor in why the jury found her guilty of manslaughter. Because if Eliza had died on her own, it's tragic, but you call the police and you let them figure that out. You are at least hoping in that case that the justice system will work, that the police will do their job, that the medical experts will do their jobs. You're hoping the people will believe you. But in the case where you hide your child's body, where you dress her and put her in garbage bags and bury her, they're not going to believe you. You know that when this child is found, and this child will most likely be found, and it will be discovered what you did, in that case, no one is going to believe you because you've already painted yourself as a liar. You've already painted yourself as somebody who covered up a crime. And if there was no crime there to cover up, why would you have covered it up? That's my opinion on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So many people are watching and aren't subscribed. Don't forget to hit like if you like the video. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. Follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitter. Handles are in the description box. Also, don't forget to order your criminal coffee. We're now catching up with our back orders, so we're in a normal ordering schedule now, and I'm going to Rhode Island this weekend to help Derek pack up those orders. So very excited about that. Very excited to get it out to you. Also excited to get more coffee for myself because I'm running low. And don't forget to check out my podcast, Crime Weekly, that I host every week with my co-host, Derek Lavasser. We talk about all different crimes. We just finished up the Aaron Hernandez case. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts or watch us on YouTube. Links are in the description box. Thank you so much. I will see you very soon. Until then, stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe. Battle's going straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. But you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly, and so you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings, blood on the strings, blood on the strings. They've been playing so my face don't. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another true crime deep dive. Today we are continuing on and finishing up our series on the decade of tragedy in Dryden, New York. And as a heads up, there will be a few cases that I have skipped over in this series, as I have spoken with family members and they've asked me that I not talk about their loved ones' stories on YouTube, and I have to respect that because, at the beginning of this series, I specifically said I wasn't trying to re-traumatize anyone in making this. I wanted to shine a light. I want to tell these stories, but not at the cost of someone's mental well-being or peace. So obviously that's the right thing to do, it's the best thing to do, and it is absolutely fine. And in today's video, we will be focusing on 6 young people who at the time of their deaths were all either current students at or recent graduates of Dryden High School. Between 1995 and 1999, these 6 young people lost their lives. All the deaths were unexpected, and each one hit the staff and students at the high school like a ton of bricks, leaving them forever changed. But before we dive in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, GlassesUSA.com. By cutting out the middleman, GlassesUSA.com offers prescription glasses and sunglasses at up to 70% off retail prices. You can shop stuff out of I'm wearing the Amelia-sized look that I love. And tis the season, you should always be wearing young man with a mop of red hair who was enjoying his first summer after graduating from high school when he was tragically killed in a car crash on August 30th, 1995. Billy had been sitting in the back seat of a car when the driver rounded a curve in Dryden, New York too quickly, went off the road and through a stand of trees before slamming into a highway signpost. Of course, the unexpected loss of someone so young, so full of life, it was stunningly sad, and the community gathered to mourn Billy and to remember his short life in what his uncle called the best attended funeral in Dryden history. It seemed as if the person who was impacted the most by the death of Billy Pace, however, was his younger brother, 17-year-old Scott Pace, who obviously felt lost and alone after losing his big brother and his best friend. And the Dryden Purple Lions were concerned that they were going to lose one of their most valuable players and the unofficial leader of their team, because Scott was so wrecked in the wake of Billy's death that many expected he wouldn't really recover anytime soon. However, Scott had no intention of abandoning his teammates on the football team, who he considered to be family, and when he arrived at the next practice in street clothes, wanting to check in with the team, he was moved to tears when the other players stood on the field and began applauding him. Scott was only 17, but the other players respected him, they looked up to him, and they admired his strength in the face of unimaginable pain. But no one knew that just a year later, Scott would also be gone for good, and his parents, Mark and Janice Pace, who had just buried one son, would have to do it all over again. On September 10th, 1996, Scott caught a ride home from football practice with 18-year-old Kelly Bowles. Also in the car was Scott's girlfriend, Heather Mix. They were only a half a mile away from the Pace home when a truck, backing out of a driveway on Etna Road, slammed right into their vehicle. Heather had to be airlifted to a nearby hospital, and Scott Pace didn't make it. Dryden School District Superintendent Donald Trombley reported that the school was fielding dozens of phone calls from concerned parents who could not possibly grasp how this much pain could be placed at the doorstep of one family. And he said, quote, "It's a parent's worst nightmare. They are absolutely flabbergasted. They're just not comprehending that this could happen to the same family twice. How do we even talk about it?" End quote. The Pace family could not endure another massive funeral, so they kept Scott's services private and small, but they did hold a memorial for their sons during which Billy and Scott's mother, Janice, spoke about how the last year had been absolute hell for Scott because he'd been missing his brother so much, and he had told her that he would give his own life to bring Billy back. Janice also read some poetry that Scott had written after losing his brother, where he talked about the sound of Billy's voice as they spent hours talking before going to sleep at night. He talked about the unusual red color of his brother's hair, and Scott also wrote about feeling left behind after Billy died, and he'd written, quote, "Let me feel the rain, let it release my pain," end quote. The day of Scott's funeral, the sky turned cloudy and gray and released a downpour of cold autumn rain on the town of Dryden. Janice Pace thanked the community and especially the students of Dryden High School for their love and support during a time of terrible pain for the Pace family. She said she thought of her son's friends teammates and classmates as her own children, and she asked that everyone think of Scott when it rained. During the memorial, two 16-year-old girls sat side by side, clutching each other's hands. Sarah Hadjany and Jennifer Bolduc were both cheerleaders on the Dryden High School varsity cheer team, and they'd been best friends since childhood when they both attended Girl Scouts and baton lessons together. And everyone in Dryden said if you had a daughter, you would want her to be exactly like Sarah and Jennifer. They were good girls, good students, and extremely responsible for their ages. Besides being active in school sports like cheer and track, the girls both held part-time jobs. Sarah worked at Clark's Food Mart after school and on weekends, and Jennifer worked across the street at the Purple Lion ice cream shop. They both helped coach the Dryden Youth cheerleading squad, and Sarah, who wanted to eventually work as a physical therapist, she tutored younger kids in the special education program. Jennifer also gave back, volunteering at the Cortland Memorial Hospital and hoping to one day work in the medical field herself. They had so much going on, so much going for them, so much to look forward to. Sarah had just seen her favorite singer, Alanis Morissette, in concert, and both Sarah and Jennifer had recently gotten their driver's licenses, and they were looking forward to, becoming more independent. At school, both the girls were incredibly popular with the younger crowd who looked up to them because at this time, cheerleaders at Dryden High School were like celebrities. Sarah and Jennifer were also popular with their peers because, yes, they were beautiful and talented, but they were also kind and friendly to everyone. Sarah and Jennifer were not the stereotypical stuck-up cheerleaders you see in teen movies. They were full of love and light, and they had a smile and a sweet compliment for everyone they encountered, and it was said that if you asked all of their friends to stand side by side, that line would stretch for a mile. They were just happy, normal teenage girls, going through their junior year of high school, enjoying being young and carefree, and not knowing the terrible fate that was ahead of them. On Friday, October 4th, 1996, Sarah and Jennifer did not show up to school, which was unusual, especially because it was a day where they would be cheering at a football game, and it wasn't just any football game, it was their homecoming game. And one of the requirements for participating was attendance at school the day of. At first, their friends on the cheer team thought the girls were maybe just running a little late to school because maybe they'd stayed up too late the night before. Sarah's parents were out of town. They were taking a little weekend vacation in Maine, and Jennifer had spent the night at Sarah's house so that Sarah wouldn't be alone. It also turned out that a male classmate had stayed the night with the girls, so they'd be less scared, but he had left Sarah's house to go to school at 7 a.m. that morning. No one thought that Sarah and Jennifer would just not show up the whole day, and everyone figured they would appear for the game with some hysterical story about why they'd missed school and apologies and smiles and laughs. But that evening, Jennifer's father, Ron, he called the home of Captain William Foley of the New York State Police. Now, Foley wasn't home at that moment because he was dropping his own kids off at the Dryden High School football game. But Ron Bolduc was concerned because he could not find his 16-year-old daughter, Jennifer, who had missed school that day after spending the night with her best friend. And he decided to seek the help of his friend, who also happened to be a law enforcement official. When Foley got home, he called Ron Bolduc back. Later, Foley would say, quote, "Ron Bolduc calls me because he's concerned. He's not going to get the appropriate response from the state police. A missing 16-year-old girl? This happens all the time. So I called Mr. Bolduc back and said I will look into it. And what I do is I ask that a fellow by the name of Investigator Bill Bean be sent. Now, this is unusual for us to send an investigator for a missing girl. We'd normally send a uniformed trooper who'd assess the situation, but in this case, as a favor to Mr. Bolduc, Investigator Bean is the first to arrive at the Hadjany residence, and he quickly determined there's cause for concern." End quote. The police would later report that there was no sign of forced entry at 42 Church Street in McLean, New York. But inside the house, there were clear signs of a struggle. In the bathroom, the shower curtain and the rod had been pulled down, and the soap dish in the shower had been broken off the wall. Both Sarah and Jennifer's cheer uniforms appeared to have just been newly washed, and they'd been laid out to dry. Jennifer's was found hanging on a towel rack, and Sarah's was in the basement on a drying rack. These would have been the clothes the girls would have put on that morning since it was a game day. But Sarah and Jennifer were nowhere to be found. The authorities alerted Sarah's parents, who quickly returned from Maine, only to find that their vehicle, a 1992 gray Chevy Lumina, was also missing from their garage. Police quickly located the car around 10 p.m. that same night. It was found in the parking lot of the Cortland Line Company, a fishing line manufacturing plant located on Kellogg Road near the southeast end of the city line and 7 miles away from Sarah's house. Law enforcement immediately forced open the trunk, fearing the worst, that the bodies of 2 teenage girls would be found inside. Sarah and Jennifer were not in the trunk, but inside the trunk and inside the rest of the vehicle, investigators discovered blood and other evidence that told them someone had taken the 2 girls by force, and most likely had taken their lives as well. Another alarming discovery was that some of the blood appeared to be made with fingerprints, prints that were in a small diamond-shaped pattern, suggesting the attacker had been wearing gloves, and that this attack had been carefully planned and calculated, not spur of the moment. The inside of the vehicle had also been saturated with some kind of oil, and the police believed that this had happened so that evidence inside could be destroyed or covered up. So the police interviewed employees at the fishing line company, and a lot of them remembered seeing something odd in their parking lot around 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. It just so happened that the cafeteria, where many of the employees spent their lunch break, it overlooked the parking lot, and they'd seen a man wearing elbow-length yellow rubber gloves walking away from the Chevy Lumina and then down Kellogg Road. All the employees gave a similar description of this man. He was between 40 and 45 years of age, stocky, with a noticeable belly and a tuft of dark hair in front of a receding hairline. He stood between 5'7" and 5'10", and he'd been wearing a dark shirt and pants. What the public didn't know at that time was there was another report of blood being found in a rustic one-room hunting cabin in the woods of Otsellic, New York, 40 miles away from the house on Church Street where Sarah and Jennifer had last been seen alive on Friday morning. The cabin belonged to a man named Bruno Couture, and he had given his friend Marcus Hutchian permission to use it that weekend. Now, this is a very, very rustic cabin. There's no electricity. It's one room. It's basically just a place to go if you want to hunt. Maybe you crash there for the night so you can get up early and get out into the woods early. Maybe you can, store your hunting equipment and stuff there. Very, very rustic, not the place you would go for like a luxury, relaxing vacation. So Marcus claimed that on Friday night, he'd arrived at this remote cabin after dark. But like I said, there's no electricity, so he wasn't sure what the puddle on the floor was. He walks in, he sees like what appears to be a drying liquid in a puddle on the floor. Now, a friend that he was with, he followed Marcus in and shined his flashlight on the floor. Both Marcus and his friend agreed that they thought the dark puddle looked like blood. So they called Bruno and they asked him what they should do. Bruno decided it would be best if he checked it out himself. So he and his fiancée Anne drove to Otsellic. When they saw what Marcus had been concerned about, they immediately called the state police. Now, when the state trooper arrived, he began asking Bruno and Anne very specific questions, like, did they know anyone who lived in McLean, New York? Did they know anyone who lived on Church Street in McLean? And if anyone had used their cabin recently? And Bruno's fiancée, Anne, responded that her brother, John Andrews, he did live on Church Street in McLean, and he'd been at the hunting cabin at least twice in the past few years. In fact, he and his wife and 6-year-old son had just used it this past summer. Later, Anne remembered the immediate reaction from the state trooper, and she said, quote, "The trooper flies by me so quickly he almost knocks me down. He runs into the camp and starts screaming for the senior investigator, and at that point, I just wanted to vomit, because my gut instinct was right. I love him, but the kidnapper is my brother, John." End quote. So when Anne was telling this story to the paper later, she kind of made it seem like as these questions were being asked, she already knew what the answers were going to be. She already knew that it was in connection to what had happened to Sarah and Jennifer, because Anne happened to work with Jennifer's mother at the hospital. So she was aware that these two girls were missing. Now there's blood found in the cabin. Now the police are asking questions about Church Street, McLean, who's been using the cabin. And she kind of had an idea of where it was going. And she knew that it was going to lead back to her brother, John. And she said at one point, she kind of exchanged glances with her fiance, Bruno, and there was like this silent understanding between them that they both knew what was happening and that it was just time to come clean. Like there was going to be no protecting of her brother in this moment. And I want to take a moment and recognize how difficult that was, because we have talked a lot in a lot of cases about how family members will cover things up and protect their loved ones. Maybe not forever, but initially, I guess that's your first instinct sometimes, right? And so it must have been incredibly difficult for Anne knowing, this is her brother. He's probably involved with this, and I'm going to point the police right in his direction. The following Monday morning, community members received freshly printed flyers with the faces of Sarah Hadjney and Jennifer Bolduc on them, but they'd barely started handing these flyers out and putting them up before the police held a press conference announcing that they had found physical evidence which led them to believe the two missing girls had been taken and they were no longer alive. Earlier that day, before everyone else knew what had happened, Dryden High School officials delivered the news to the student body because the police had wanted them to hear it from the adults they trusted instead of on the news. 16-year-old Fred Gilbert, a junior who had been close to both of the girls, remembered the moment that he found out, saying, quote, "My teacher came in to read this note about it, and she was crying really hard. After I heard it, I cried too." End quote. The students had been instructed to stay calm and stay in their classrooms, but immediately after the prepared statement had been read aloud by teachers and administrators, some of the students began screaming, sobbing, throwing things, and students and faculty members streamed into the hallways, sobbing and clutching onto each other for support. Classes were canceled for the remainder of the day, and 10th grader Dan Darling said, quote, "It just makes you so sad because everyone is sitting around and crying. I just wanted to get out of there." End quote. Donald Trombley, the superintendent, was at a loss, saying, quote, "We have an extremely torn up high school right now. The tragedy that has befallen this school district is immense. I don't know how our students, who have been so emotionally wounded by the tragedies over the last 3.5 years, are going to cope with this. It's almost surreal." End quote. And he's specifically speaking about, obviously, what happened to the Pace brothers, but also shortly before Billy Pace died, the Dryden High School football team had lost their football coach. He had been murdered. So they were sort of trying to recover from that when Billy died, and then they were trying to recover from that when Scott died, and then they were trying to recover from that when this happened to Jennifer and Sarah. So it was like one thing after the other, with no time to really catch your bearings between each tragic incident. Also on Monday morning, 31-year-old John Benjamin Andrews was approached by police officers as he left the night shift at Paul Trinity Microchipped Corporation in Cortland, New York, and he worked there as a computerized lathe operator. Now, he initially refused to speak to the police, and he asked for a lawyer, at which point he was arrested and brought into the police station for an interview. John Andrews lived at 38 Church Street, right next door to the Hadjney family, and he and his wife Patricia and their 6-year-old son had been living there since 1994, but they mostly kept to themselves. Now, Andrews told law enforcement that he'd been home all day Friday, October 4th, but they had already spoken to his sister Anne, who had been the one to point them in his direction. Anne had not only told the police that her brother John had used the hunting cabin, she had not only told them that he lived on Church Street, the same street as one of the victims, she'd also told them that on the afternoon of Friday, October 4th, around 3 p.m., her brother had shown up at her house, which was located just a mile from where the Hadjney's Chevy Lumina had been abandoned in the parking lot of the Cortland Line Company. Anne claimed that John was walking, he was covered in oil, and he told her he'd been working on his car all day before asking her for a ride to his house. Now, this house, where John Andrews lived with his wife and son, it was connected to Sarah Hadjney. In 2009, when Sarah and her friend Jennifer vanished, Sarah had been living right next door to John Andrews, but she had grown up in the house that John Andrews now occupied. Sarah's parents, John and Sandra, had owned the house from 1980 to 1990, but they'd moved to Hartford when Sarah was 10 years old. However, in August of 1999, the Hadgeny family returned to Church Street, and they bought John Hadgeny's parents' house at 42 Church Street, which was right next door to their old home. And although John Andrews and his family had been living on Church Street for a few years, like I said, they pretty much had kept to themselves, and they didn't really socialize with their neighbors, including Sarah's family. George Totman, who lived across the street from the Andrews, he said he never even knew the man's first name, which was not common when living in such a small town. Totman said, quote, "If you live in a community for a year and no one knows you, it tells you what sort of person they are," end quote. Damn, I wonder what my neighbors think about me. I wonder, because I've been living in this area now for going on 2 years. Ain't nobody knows me, and I don't know anybody, and I like it that way. So I wonder if they're thinking this about me. I mean, it was a different time, right? This is like 1999. It wasn't that long ago, but it was a different time. Also, a super small town. I think it's more common now for people to keep to themselves and not talk to their neighbors. Just agree with me and make me feel better about myself, because if anything ever happens and I'm accused of something, the neighbors are going to have a field day. So when Sarah and Jennifer had gone missing, all of their friends and neighbors, especially on Church Street, they'd reached out to their parents to see if there was anything they could do and to offer their support, except for the Andrews family, who had stayed inside their house as everyone else was out searching and handing out flyers. And when the residents of Church Street were asked to place a burning candle in their windows to keep the hope alive for the missing girls, to show a sign of solidarity, the Andrews windows were dark and candleless. After John Andrews was in custody, the police announced that they believed he'd entered the unlocked home of Sarah around 8 a.m. on Friday morning. Remember, Sarah lives right next door to him. And he must have entered around the same time that Sarah and Jennifer were in the bathroom, busy getting ready for school. He took them by surprise. There was a struggle, and he was able to get them into the Chevy Lumina that belonged to Sarah's parents before driving them to Otselic, New York, in Chenango County, where he sexually abused them, tortured them, murdered them, and then dismembered their bodies, disposing of body parts in several locations stretching over 4 miles. Now, it appeared that some sort of violent encounter had happened at Bruno Couture's cabin, which sat on 29 acres of land and included an L-shaped pond that he had dug a few years prior. A bewildered Bruno would later say, quote, "I don't know why he picked the cabin. If he was standing here in front of me, I'd like to ask him," end quote. I know why, because it's a one-room, electricity-free cabin in the middle of nowhere. That's why, Bruno. And obviously, any time a life is taken, it's devastating. But to have 2 young lives taken in such an absolutely violent and horrific way, it was really more than anyone could bear at that moment. At a memorial for the girls, their classmates and teachers tried to focus on how Sarah and Jennifer had lived instead of how they had died. 2,000 people gathered in the Dryden High School gym and waited their turn to look at pictures of the 2 friends, dressed up for school dances, posing in their cheerleading uniforms, blowing out candles on their birthday cakes. Adam Barsh, a senior, said, quote, "They were 2 of the most beautiful people from this school. I've been so sad. I don't know what to do," end quote. Social studies teacher Joseph Mack told stories of how friendly and considerate both girls had been. He had said Sarah would sometimes be late to his class, and when he would ask her why she was late, she would say, "Mr. Mack, there's just so many people to talk to." Joseph Mack said, quote, "That was Sarah, too many friends and not enough time," end quote. And Jennifer, she would always check in with Mac, her social studies teacher, and ask him how he was doing throughout the day. One day, he said she asked him how he was doing 3 times in 3 hours, and when he pointed this out to her, Jennifer told him, well, maybe things have changed in the last 3 hours. John Hayes, the reverend from the church both girls and their families attended, he addressed the gathering crowd and said, quote, "With the loss of Jennifer and Sarah, the sense of innocence and safety living in a small town has been taken from us. Why did this happen? We ask it in anger and pain. in despair and frustration. Why did God let this happen? I don't believe anyone will ever have the answer to the why. End quote. A line from the movie It's a Wonderful Life was also read, the one where the little girl, she announces that every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, and some in the crowd solemnly held up bells and rang them. The gruesome work of recovering the remains of Sarah and Jennifer began. State police barricaded off a thickly wooded area bordered by 4 different roads: Graham Road, Gray Road, Oakley Road, and Rhett Road. And law enforcement, along with scent dogs and their handlers, could be seen periodically emerging from the thick foliage to consult a map and plan their next move. They combed the acreage around Bruno Couture's cabin and dredged the pond on the property, and they began recovering body parts. It was believed that John Andrews had pulled over at different areas to dispose of some of the body parts deep into the forest and then simply tossed others out the window as he drove. Now, John Andrews, when he was arrested, he had been charged with kidnapping, but he had not been charged with murder yet because the authorities, they still hadn't figured out exactly where Sarah and Jennifer had been killed or exactly how, and Andrews was not cooperating at all. Tompkins County District Attorney George Dents, who you'll remember from our past 2 videos on Dryden, New York, he announced that charging Andrews with kidnapping, which was a Class A felony, that would at least keep him behind bars without bail while the police continued investigating. The crime scene covered a 3-county area: Tompkins, Cortland, and Chenango, and the respective district attorneys in these counties would still have to discuss whose jurisdiction the crime fell under. It was later decided that Tompkins County and the DA George Dents would be the ones to handle any murder charges brought against John Andrews. And although everyone wanted to begin healing after the string of senseless loss that had hit them, it was really going to be a long road. The school offered counseling, hoping to catch early signs of depression or suicidal thoughts before it was too late. Chris Bertelson, the post-vention coordinator at the Suicide Prevention and Crisis Center, said, quote, "It's crucial that people turn to each other and take advantage of counseling. What we as an agency are most concerned about, particularly for the kids, is that people would have a sense of meaningless. The kids just start drifting. Debriefing helps prevent that. It helps get one's feet back on the ground," end quote. And I'm talking about this because it will become important later. I mean, it's important in general. She's absolutely right. It's important to intervene very quickly after a traumatic event like this, especially with young kids. And psychological debriefing is a formal version of providing emotional and psychological support immediately following a traumatic event. Now, the goal is to prevent the development of PTSD and other negative effects. Most psychological debriefing interventions include a single session, which might last 1 to 3 hours in the days immediately following a traumatic event. It's also called critical incident stress debriefing, and it's really just intended to provide a bridge from the traumatic event to hope, healing, and recovery by giving the survivor a voice and offering them closure, hopefully allowing them to live with a restored sense of security and overall well-being. But if you think about it, a lot of these kids, they were so young, too young to fully wrap their heads around all that was happening, all that had happened. And they were not only devastated and terrified themselves, right, but their parents, their trusted adults, their teachers. They were also grappling with all of these feelings, and even if the adults didn't verbalize their fears, their emotions, in an effort to protect the children, the kids are still going to pick up on it. And it wasn't just affecting Dryden, but surrounding areas as well, especially in the counties where searches for Sarah and Jennifer's remains were happening every single day. The Georgetown Fire Station had become the makeshift command center for the searches, and every morning students who attended an Otselic Valley Elementary School were driven by this fire station on their way to school, and they would gaze out the windows of their school buses at the lines of police cars and CSI vans. Before these young children were sent home for a 4-day weekend, school officials and state troopers called an assembly to try and calm their nerves, and the kids were asked to raise their hands if they were scared. Mike Rotondi, their principal, said, quote, "There were many, many, many hands," end quote. A class at Georgetown High School reached out to their neighboring town, writing a letter specifically for the students and staff at Dryden High School, and that letter said, quote, "The bewilderment of this horrific act is an awakening that shows that senseless violence can hit so close to home. It is odd that a brutal act such as this can tear communities apart and yet in a way bring them together. In grieving the loss of Sarah Ann Hageny and Jennifer Lynn Bolduc, our communities offer to yours open arms and hearts, end quote. And this is very moving, right? Because these are high school kids who are behaving in a very mature, compassionate, empathetic way. High school kids, teenagers are often known for being incredibly self-centered, incredibly, selfish and focused inward, which they should be. That's part of their development. So to hear that these kids were able to come together to offer such beautiful words of support to, strangers pretty much, people that they just knew were going through it and needed a helping hand, needed to hear something beautiful and warm and kind. It's very moving. And it does show that these tragedies happen, right? And they have horrific ripple effects, but they also can bring out the good in people and in humanity. But in Dryden, the tension was palpable. Local reporter Dick Case said, quote, "This hits close to home. People say that about the tragedy in Dryden. The horror comes inside our homes and our hearts," end quote. A Dryden man who lived on a farm with no close-by neighbors told Case that he had purchased his first gun after the Harris family had been murdered, saying, quote, "No one knew how horribly they had died. Just then, their killer remained out there, a frightful phantom we all saw and didn't see at the same time," end quote. After Sarah and Jennifer had become victims, the man announced that he was now going to teach his own teenage daughter how to use and handle the gun. Another woman in Syracuse claimed that the terrible events which had happened in Dryden over the past 6 years were not random at all, but a clear sign that the town was under the hold of some satanic influence. And I wonder if this is where the rumors of the supernatural and curses started, because that's really the first time I read it in a newspaper article where there was some semblance of a supernatural element. And a social worker named Mary Lou angrily demanded that men march against violence towards women, saying, quote, "This isn't a tragedy, it's an outrage, and it happens every week in our community. The hideous attacks on women and female children. What the hell is going on here? Do we read about women raping and cutting up men? Every man in central New York ought to be out marching," end quote. The week following John Andrews' arrest brought with it more information about the crime and the man who was believed to have committed it. Dr. James Terzian, a forensic pathologist who was working on the case, he said he believed that Andrews had used multiple instruments to dismember the bodies of Sarah and Jennifer, stating, quote, "The manner of death is homicide by violent means. We don't know how they were killed, and we may never know," end quote. Because, if you think about it, their bodies were cut up, right? So it would be very difficult to figure out exactly what the cause of death was. Some background on John Andrews also made its way to the papers, and it was a little shocking. He'd been a sergeant in the United States Air Force in 1991 when he'd been convicted in a military court of housebreaking, burglary, and aggravated assault. Andrews and his wife were living on a base outside of Bitburg, Germany, when he forced himself into the apartment of another woman who happened to be the wife of another airman. And this couple were actually friends with Andrews and his wife, Patricia. Now, the woman claimed that one night she'd heard a knock on her door, and when she looked through the peephole, she didn't see anyone, so she opened the door. And that's when she found John Andrews wearing a ski mask. He forced her back into the apartment with what she believed was an intent to sexually assault her. Andrews' attack escalated when the woman bit his thumb, and this caused him to hit her on the head with a chrome dumbbell that he had with him 3 times. As he was making his getaway, the woman, who thankfully survived, she grabbed the back of his ski mask, unmasking him and identifying him to police. Investigators would later find the dumbbell in John Andrews' apartment with traces of the woman's hair, skin, and blood still on it, and he was sentenced to 5 years at Fort Leavenworth, a maximum security military prison. He remained there from July of 1991 to December of 1994, and upon his release, he was dishonorably discharged from the Air Force. 3 months later, John Andrews and his family bought the house on Church Street, right next to Sarah Hageny. But here's the thing, law enforcement could figure out no motive. They'd been unable to figure out any interaction that John Andrews might have had with Sarah or her family. Andrews kept to himself. He wasn't super friendly. He wasn't neighborly. And they don't really come out right and say this, but I'm sure that the police talked to Sarah's parents and they were like, hey, has this guy ever talked to you? Is he hanging around? Does he seem overly interested in Sarah? Et cetera, et cetera. And they most likely said, like, no, we don't talk to him. We don't know him. We haven't really had any interaction with him. So it was sort of theorized that maybe John Andrews had become obsessed with the young girl, sort of like watching her from afar, waiting for his chance to get closer, and he had taken that chance to grab her when her parents were out of town. Now, he may not even have known that Jennifer was staying the night at Sarah's house when he crept in early that Friday morning. So he was either alarmed by this or he felt like, bonus girl. Either way, he took them both. He hurt them both, and he killed them both. And now knowing that this man had a violent past, he had a history of hurting women, he'd been to prison for it, he'd been dishonorably discharged because of it, it sort of gave people an answer of some kind, right? They still didn't know exactly why. They couldn't figure out an exact motive. John Andrews himself wasn't talking, but at least it gave people some sort of closure in a way to know that this is just a violent guy who hurts women, who's done it before, and who did it again. But not everyone was pleased with all of this information being released to the public. On October 18th, John Andrews' attorneys, James Baker and William Easton, accused the police and other officials of leaking information to the media and making prejudicial statements about their client. The lawyers said, quote, "The enormous dread experienced by the community has been amplified by unfounded speculation about the case, as well as prejudicial leaks from named and unnamed public officials," end quote. So the attorneys were referring to several items that had been published in the papers, like John Andrews' mugshot and his criminal record, as well as comments from the police that he could have potentially been a stalker or even a serial killer. Now, to be fair, the lawyers said that the police said he was a stalker or a serial killer. I did read articles where the police had suggested that he may have been watching Sarah, that he may have been stalking her, kind of following her movements, figuring out when he could strike. But I did not ever see any mention of the police kind of speculating or commenting that he may have been a serial killer. However, I will say it's not like a crazy thing to speculate about, right? He did this to this woman in 1991. Now he does it again to two young girls. Is it crazy to think that this guy may have been behaving violently all of his life and he just got caught these two times? But anyways, the attorneys Baker and Easton, they requested a gag order, claiming that at this point their client could be facing the death penalty, and the news coverage was hurting his chances of finding a fair and impartial jury. And District Attorney George Dentz said that no leaks had come from his office, and he was vehemently opposed to the gag order. And Judge William Barrett agreed, ruling that the order was unnecessary since there were enough rules in place to govern information released by the press and to the press. And thus far, they hadn't printed anything that was untrue. On October 25th, the papers printed that the state police had recovered more evidence after completing searches at John Andrews' home, vehicle, and boat. From his house, they had recovered yellow rubber gloves, 2 axes in leather cases, a pair of military goggles that were designed to protect the wearer from sun, dust, and wind, a t-shirt and a towel that appeared to be stained with blood, 5 pairs of sneakers that they wanted to compare to shoe prints found at certain areas where remains had been found, a chip of wood that appeared to be stained with blood, ashes from his furnace that may have been evidence Andrew had tried to destroy by burning it, a trash barrel, a chainsaw, motor oil, and rolls of black, gray, green, and red duct tape. In his garage and yard, police found a 3rd axe, more duct tape, and another pair of gloves, as well as additional clothing. In John Andrews' 1989 Chevy Celebrity, a canister of pepper spray was recovered along with a hammer, a light blue bedspread, wire, a blue gym bag, a green backpack, and a map drawn on a yellow legal pad. Now, in the warrant for the vehicle, the police had specifically stated that they were looking for a map that would be hand-drawn and show the geographical area of Tompkins County, Cortland County, and Chenango County, and that was exactly what they found. They also got a court order requiring John Andrews to provide them with hair samples as well as scrapings from underneath his fingernails. So let's go over this a little bit because this case is never going to go to trial and we're going to find out why. So we're never really going to hear legitimately from the police or during the trial what all this evidence means. But let's look at the evidence and sort of ask ourselves that question because you've got 2 young girls here. So the media is not going to print all of these details. The police probably aren't even going to give the media all these details, but they're finding axes, they're taking chainsaws, gloves, duct tape, pepper spray, a blue bedspread, wire, things like that. What it appears happened is John Andrews most likely had that pepper spray or mace. They refer to it as pepper spray or mace, even though I believe those two things are a little bit different, but he probably had that when he entered the house. He probably sprayed them to, make sure that they couldn't see, that they couldn't fight back, because he is going to have to restrain 2 girls at this point instead of 1, unless he knew that 2 would be there and he came prepared. And then he's got all of these rolls of duct tape, which means he most likely tied them up and restrained them before bringing them through the house into the garage and then into the car of Sarah's family members. You've got a light blue bedspread. Maybe that was used to cover them up while he drove so that they wouldn't be spotted from the road. You've also got wire, maybe also likely restraining them while they're in the car so they can't move, things like that. It shows that this was a very terrifying time for these 2 young girls, that they wouldn't have had much chance to fight back against somebody who came so prepared. And then you also have this hand-drawn map. Now, why would John Andrews need a hand-drawn map? I really don't know. I would assume that if he just wanted to know where he was going, he could have used a regular map. But the fact that he hand-drew a map, it makes me think that he specifically and personally wanted something on that map, such as, for instance, maybe the areas and locations where he had left body parts, because that is something that, if we're being honest here, something that serial killers do, right? They like to keep trophies. They like to keep little pieces of their crimes to remember their crimes. And he may have wanted to remember where he placed these body parts, maybe to revisit later. I don't know. It's just a theory. I can't figure out any other reason why he would have had to have hand-drawn a map when he could have just bought one at any gas station. On November 1st, all of this evidence was presented to a Tompkins County grand jury, who then indicted John Andrews on 26 counts, including kidnapping, burglary, sexual abuse, and 9 counts of first-degree murder. Now, the grand jury indictment stated that law enforcement and the prosecutors believed Andrews had tortured the girls and raped them before taking their lives, and now it would be up to District Attorney George Dents to decide whether or not he would seek the death penalty. But before that decision could even be made, just the day after the indictment was handed down, at 1:30 in the morning, John Andrews was found dead in his cell after hanging himself with his own shoelaces. Tompkins County Sheriff Emery Guest, who we also remember from 2-year-old Eliza Mae Bush's story in this previous video, he claimed that they had been keeping a continual log of Andrews' activities and demeanors, and he'd given them no reason to suspect he intended to take his own life. In fact, just the night before, just hours before they found him, he'd been playing cards with the other inmates. They'd been chatting, just having a good old time. And Andrews had obviously been on suicide watch, and he'd been placed in a cell by himself in a maximum security block of 4 cells, with guards checking on him every 15 minutes. Guest said that it was the first death of an inmate in the 11-year history of the county's public safety building, stating, quote, "This building was designed to minimize the chance for an inmate to kill himself, and the clothes hooks ordinarily give way if weight is applied. Andrews managed to tie the shoelaces in a way that defeated that safety measure," end quote, because apparently Andrews had tied his shoelaces around his neck and then on the clothes hook on the door and hanged himself. So I'm just going to say it because some of us, maybe even a lot of us, may be thinking the same thing, but this gives me like heavy Jeffrey Epstein vibes, right? He was on suicide watch. We were watching him. We were checking on him every 15 minutes. I don't know how we managed this. So either they weren't checking on him as much as they claimed, or maybe there was somebody who had a hand in helping him out, helping him to fulfill this action. You've got a small town. You've got 2 young local girls. You've got, a bunch of people, a bunch of adults who have children who cannot believe that this happened to 2 young girls in their own community. You got a lot of anger and hatred. But reportedly, there was no doubt that Andrews had done this to himself because he'd left letters to relatives telling them what he planned to do. However, law enforcement would not comment on whether Andrews had confessed to the murders of Sarah and Jennifer in those letters or provided more information, such as motive or exactly how he had done it. Andrew's attorneys also claimed they had no idea that he was going to kill himself, and when asked if they believed that their client was guilty of committing the crime he'd been accused of, William Easton responded, quote, "I think the answer to that is pretty self-evident, but you'll have to ask the state police for the details," end quote. DA George Dents said that he had briefed Andrew's attorneys on the evidence that they had in the case, and he suspected that at the time of his death, John Andrews was fully apprised of the strength of the case against him, including a bloody knife that had been found with his fingerprints all over it. This had been found at the hunting cabin. George Dents felt that Andrews knew it was all over, and he decided to take his own life rather than face the music, saying, quote, "We, who have been involved in the criminal investigation, are absolutely confident that he and he alone was responsible for the deaths of Sarah Hajny and Jennifer Bolduc," end quote. After he was gone, some of the information that law enforcement had collected and uncovered during their investigation was revealed, specifically in regards to the early life of John Benjamin Andrews. Born on July 11, 1965, John Andrews was the middle child of Louise and John Benjamin Andrews Sr. John Jr. had an older sister and a younger sister, and his father, John Andrews Sr., had served in the United States Marines between 1959 and 1974. He'd done 3 tours in Vietnam, for which he was awarded the Purple Heart. But, according to John Sr.'s brother, Kenneth, John Sr. had returned from Vietnam wounded, disabled, and changed. Kenneth said, quote, "He had a tough time over in Vietnam, and he wasn't the same when he got back," end quote. There wasn't a lot of work for someone like John Sr. in his position when he came back from, fighting in a war, and he would sometimes work as a dishwasher or take odd jobs, but money was always tight. And in 1978, he and his wife had to file for bankruptcy. And it seems like John Sr. could sometimes be physically abusive to his wife and children, and he was drinking a lot, being charged with drunk driving by the Cortland police in both 1980 and 1982. And in 1985, John Sr. was arrested on a felony charge that he had sexually assaulted a minor girl in Dryden. But despite all of this, his son, John Jr., for all intents and purposes, seemed to be largely unaffected, as far as his friends and peers could tell. John Jr. was a nice boy, a polite boy, easygoing, an all-American kind of kid who played JV football and went four-wheeling with his friends on the backcountry roads on the weekends. John Jr. loved anything to do with cars, and like most of his friends at that time, he owned a hot rod and a pickup truck, and he took auto mechanics courses at the local BOCES. In his senior yearbook, when students were asked where they saw themselves in 10 years, John Andrews Jr. had said, quote, "I will have a great family and my own company. Also, remembering the times we fooled Mr. Godfrey in the lower parking lot," end quote. But John Jr. was not particularly close to his father, whose emotional state had seemed to be deteriorating as the years went on. Neighbors remembered that John Sr. returned from Vietnam and stopped shaving or cutting his hair, and he would go out hunting every single day. A classmate of John Jr.'s said that sometimes John Jr. would talk to his mom, and he seemed to have a good relationship with her, but he stayed clear of his father. And almost as soon as John Sr. was charged with the sexual assault of a minor, John Jr. enlisted in the Navy. He married his high school sweetheart, Patricia McGorry, and a few years later, the couple were living on Aviano Air Base in Italy when John Andrews Sr. went into his bedroom, closed the door, and shot himself in the head with a shotgun, dying at the age of 46. And then, as we know, in 1991, John Andrews Jr. was imprisoned after attacking a woman and hitting her on the head with a dumbbell 3 times. When Andrews arrived back in Tompkins County after being released from prison and dishonorably discharged from the Air Force, he showed up to a company called Gallery Machines, wearing his military fatigues and asking to be interviewed for a job as a machinist. The company was owned by husband and wife Glenda and Harry Hartman, and Glenda interviewed Andrews, and she asked him why he wasn't continuing on with the military. Glenda would later tell the media, quote, "He said, kind of sheepishly, I remember his face, he said he wanted to be home with his family. The service wasn't much of a place for a family," end quote. His coworkers, who called him Andy, said he always seemed sad, and when he walked, he would keep his head down, not making eye contact unless he absolutely had to. Brian Lynn, who often shared a lunch break with Andrews, said, quote, "He didn't seem twisted or anything. He was an average kind of guy," end quote. When Andrews left the company on October 6, 1995, to take a job at the Pal Trinity Corp, where his mother had worked for over a decade, he paid Glenda and Harry Hartman $20 for a pipe wrench he had once lost while he worked for them. But during the time he worked for them, he'd never told them that he'd been in prison for assaulting a woman, nor had he ever mentioned that he'd been dishonorably discharged from the U.S. Air Force. He kind of made it seem like leaving the military was his own plan, his own idea, because he wanted to be a family guy. At his new job, where his mother Louise was well-liked and very well-respected, people said Andrews was fine. He did his job well, and then he went home. And I have to admit, the whole vibe I'm getting from John Andrews is very Gary Ridgway. For those of you who don't know, which I'm sure most of you do, Gary Ridgway was the Green River Killer. And he was awful. And everyone was so stunned when they found out that he was this monster because he had been such a normal guy. You know, he was good at his job. He minded his own business. He liked to go to garage sales. He didn't cause trouble for anyone. He was polite. He would help you out if you needed it. Just a normal, average guy. And one of John Andrews' neighbors said, quote, "It seemed I was the only one around here who got to know him. He did me a favor and I did him some. He seemed very neighborly to me." End quote. No one knows what was going on behind Andrews' average guy demeanor, right? No one knows what kind of thoughts and impulses he was having, what kind of dark thoughts and dark impulses he was having, and what his actual motive was for why he did what he did to two beautiful and innocent 16-year-old girls. And honestly, I personally don't care. I don't need to know. He was clearly a monster, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was responsible for other missing women. No one decides to just kidnap two girls, torture them, and then chop them up into pieces for their first crime. That takes some graduating. That takes some trial and error. It takes some practice and planning beforehand. So I don't feel like this was his first time doing anything like this. And John's sister Anne said, quote, "What makes us do things? What makes us not do things? What pushed my brother over the edge? The police tell us it was some kind of woman hate crime because of the way the bodies were mutilated, but John idolized my mother." End quote. That doesn't necessarily matter. Because, first of all, I mean, many violent criminals who go on to hurt or kill women have great relationships with their mothers, right? Some of these mothers come out and support them in the media, like we saw with Shirley King and Michael King in the first video of this series. And we also don't know what was happening behind the scenes with John Andrews and his mother. It could have seemed that he had a close relationship with her, but it could have been more of like a codependent relationship. It could have been, maybe an unhealthy level of a relationship. There could have been abuse behind the scenes. He could have been angry with her for not protecting him from his father, things like that. We don't know all of the details. But what I do know is the community of Dryden, New York, they weren't really that sad to find out that John Andrews had ended his own life. Many of them had not been necessarily looking forward to a trial, worried that it would cause more emotional trauma to the families of Sarah and Jennifer, as well as cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. However, it seemed that John Andrews had, in a way, escaped true justice. He had escaped having to face the parents and loved ones of his victims and hear their words, hear their impact statements. He had escaped having to sit there and hear all the evidence that they had against him while a jury of his peers judged him. Local man Chris Wood said, quote, "I can't say I'm sorry. I have no problem with the fact he's dead. It's just like saying I'm going to take the lives of two people who did nothing wrong and just walk away from it." End quote. Another man, Bill Dahl, remarked, quote, "I'm kind of disappointed. He sort of took the easy way out. It will leave a lot of unanswered questions." End quote. Bill Dahl's fiancée, Tina Kinsman, she said they weren't really looking forward to raising their future children in the world that they now currently felt they were living in. She and Bill had loved growing up in the country where you could walk anywhere you wanted and stay out with your friends all night, where you could open your door to a stranger who would then have the possibility of becoming a friend. She said, quote, "The freedom that we had is gone. We'll keep a closer eye on our children and know where they are. You don't dare walk too far alone. It's scary." End quote. But the fear and sadness wasn't finished with Dryden just yet. One of Sarah and Jennifer's classmates and fellow cheerleaders had been planning to spend the night at Sarah's house that Thursday in October, but at the last minute plans had changed. Katie Savina had been close to both girls, but especially Sarah, who she had considered to be her best friend. When they were killed, it hit her hard. And as it did to so many in Dryden, it changed her. Before that, Katie had been very innocent and naive. She hadn't even had her first kiss yet. But when her friends died, she saw the world and life very differently. She began wearing Sarah's clothes, especially Sarah's belt, which she wore every day. and she'd often visit Sarah and Jennifer's graves on special occasions to spend some time in quiet reflection about the lives they might have been living if they were still alive. But as some time passed, Katie began to brighten up again, and her big smile and open heart returned. Her mother, Liz, said that Katie didn't make friends, she took hostages, and she'd never leave a room without a hug and an I love you. Katie graduated from high school and began attending college at nearby Oswego College. Right after completing her first year, Katie went back home to hang out with some friends, especially her best friend from college, 19-year-old Cheryl Thayer, who was leaving the next day to move to California. On the evening of June 11th, 1999, the two girls were with three other friends, all guys, two of them who were over the age of 21. And even though both Katie and Cheryl were only 19, they'd had some drinks at a bar outside of Cortland. Cheryl Thayer would later say, quote, Katie and I were refused service because of our age, so we both just drank out of our friends' drinks. We left around 2 o'clock in the morning. When we got to the car, I could feel alcohol in my system, so I called shotgun. And Katie would never drive, if she's even had one sip of a drink. I told the three guys we were taking home that one of them should drive, but all the guys said they were too wasted. So that's how I ended up behind the wheel, even though I'm from Ithaca and I didn't know the roads. Also, the seating arrangement was weird. Katie was sitting in the seat behind me. The guy in the middle was huge. Normally, Katie would have been in the middle. I was driving her home first. She told me to take the back roads because they were quicker. I had no idea where we were going. I didn't know the roads. I didn't see the sign. It's 2:30 in the morning. The roads are deserted, and here comes this truck out of nowhere. End quote. Cheryl Thayer, whose blood alcohol was far over the legal limit, she failed to stop at an intersection, and the 1990 Chevy Corsica that she was driving was struck by another vehicle and propelled forward, where it became wedged underneath a tractor-trailer that was driving southbound on McLean Road. And then the car burst into flames. Katie Savina was the only one who did not make it out alive. Remembering this moment, Cheryl Thayer was unable to stop the tears from streaming down her face, and she said, quote, there were flames. My door was wedged closed. The truck driver pulled me out. The moment I was taken out of the car, it exploded. End quote. 19-year-old Cheryl Thayer was arrested and charged with homicide, driving while intoxicated, and vehicular manslaughter. She could have faced 10 years in prison, but Katie's parents, Liz and Jim Savino, they worked with the Cortland district attorney, asking that the young girl only spend 6 months in prison and then 5 years of probation. Liz Savino
and
said,
it doesn't
quote,
feel like
I
a
tried to
budget
do what
tablet
Katie
whatsoever.
would have wanted.
I'd say my
Katie was a true, loyal friend. My
Pro
way of
16
handling
is
my
only
daughter's death is to live the legacy she would have wanted, to try to open myself up to others and be less judgmental. I'm not certain I'm as successful as she was, but I'm certainly trying. I truly believe she is guiding me. End quote. 3 months after attending the memorial service of his friend and classmate, Katie Savino, 20-year-old Mike Vogt took a 12-gauge shotgun out into a little cabin in the woods that he had built with his childhood best friend, Johnny Lapinto, and Mike took his own life. He'd been teammates with Scott Pace. He'd known Billy Pace. He'd been coached by the football coach who had been murdered, and he'd been close to Sarah and Jennifer. He'd also loved Katie. And it's so chilling because I went through thousands of archived articles to do this series, specifically for this video, and Mike's name would sometimes pop up in them. He'd be commenting on the latest tragedy, the latest heartbreak, and you could tell he was getting more and more despondent each time, more hopeless. I guess that this is the benefit of hindsight. After the deaths of the Pace brothers and after the deaths of Sarah and Jennifer, there was a November 1996 article talking about how the football team was trying to cope and how they'd all retreated to the team room after learning about Scott Pace's death and how they did it again after hearing the news about Sarah and Jennifer. And this one paragraph caught my eye and it kind of broke my heart. It says, quote, this is where we always seemed to end up, said Mike Vogt, a senior co-captain. The Purple Lions sat in the tiny room Friday listening to I'm Not Happy, a mournful rock tune by a group called Sponge. They hung tokens of remembrance on leather cords around their necks, wooden coins with the initials of everyone who died, end quote. I mean, come on, this story that we're talking about right now, I kind of feel it's a little bit timely considering what has recently happened in Uvalde, Texas, and what's been happening more and more in schools around the United States. Childhood is fleeting already. It goes by much too fast. And it takes with it the benefit of being innocent and naive, the ability that a young person has to think that the world is this great place and that the people in it are mostly good. It's truly a treasure, those years of ignorant bliss, and everyone deserves to have them, to keep those memories of innocence, safe and sound. No kid should ever have to go through all of this, go through losing so many people. They shouldn't have to struggle to make sense of the senseless. But these kids in Dryden went through it over and over again, and it was a lot, and it was too much for Mike. And I feel like it would have been too much for me as well, especially at that age, at that time in my life where you're sort of just starting to grapple with feelings of morality and the understanding that, one day you're going to die, and one day everybody you love is going to die, and one day everybody you're looking at is going to die. It's like a lot. It's a lot for a young mind to handle. And this is what I was attempting to say when we began this series. Is there something eye-catching about a small town, the picture of simplicity and safety, experiencing a decade of absolute chaos? Of course, we're only human. We're drawn to patterns. We're drawn to things that seem truly unbelievable, things that we could never imagine going through. But given the fact that we didn't live through this, we have the luxury of thinking it's unbelievable. It could never happen to us. The people of Dryden, they didn't get to do that. They had to believe it. They had to face it. And it wasn't a curse or the work of some satanic presence. It was a series of unfortunate events that changed the course of people's lives forever. So my love and support goes out to the people who were affected, to the people of Dryden, to the people of the surrounding communities. You may not trust me. You may think of me as like a reporter or a journalist. I'm not. You may not trust anyone with your stories or with the memories of your loved ones. But I hope that we can all in this world regain a bit of that childhood innocence where we thought that the world was a great place and that the people in it were mostly good. Because if we don't, if we continue down this path of being jaded and fearful and feeling that we can't trust anybody and feeling that everybody's out to hurt us, it doesn't bode well for the future. And I don't know about you guys, but I would like my kids to grow up in a world where they can walk outside and view a stranger as a friend and not as a potential enemy. Thank you guys so much for being here for the series. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. Subscribe if you haven't already. You'll find the links in the description box to Glasses USA and all the frames that I showed you in this video. You'll also find links to my social media handles on Twitter and Instagram, as well as a link to purchase my coffee brand that I started with my co-host on Crime Weekly podcast, Derek Levasseur. It's called Criminal Coffee. It's a very, very good coffee. The best coffee, if I do say so myself. So go ahead and order yours now because we are finally catching up with orders and you should be getting your order within a week or so. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to my Patreons for being here. Thank you guys for sticking with me through this series, understanding that we weren't going to try to sensationalize anything. We were going to try to talk about these people, what they went through, their lives, who they were, with the utmost sensitivity and compassion, knowing that they're real people and many of these people are still alive and still struggling with this today. So once again, my heart goes out to them, my thoughts, my prayers, all of that jazz. I'm heading off to CrimeCon in London this coming week, so there's going to be a little gap in content here, but if you head over to Crime Weekly, you will see that we have started the Brittany Drexel case over on Crime Weekly, and that's going to be a series, and there should be a couple episodes of that up on podcast platforms and on YouTube by the time you guys see this, or at least one will be up, but more will follow. Thank you guys so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. Oh, these feelings I bury, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings, blood on the strings, blood on the strings. Being played so my fingers don't bleed. Got blood on the strings, blood on the strings.
Get away from him. Don't touch him.
Left their little sushi bed here.
I just farted on.
I don't even have a pillowcase on that thing. Insignificant.
I'm just trying to save my...
Hey guys, it's Minx here. How you doing today? Hope you're feeling super normal. This is Weeping Falls Massacre. Let's check it out. January 25th, 1992. Troubled by nightmares from his past, Eric Stoll awakens in his apartment in the outskirts of Weeping Falls. Wow, the sensitivity is way too fucking low on the mouse. Holy shit. Hey guys, it's Minx here. How you doing today? Hope you're feeling super normal. This is Weeping Falls Massacre. Let's check it out. January 25th, 1992. Troubled by nightmares from his past, Eric Stoll awakens in his apartment in the outskirts of Weeping Falls. Wow, the sensitivity is way too fucking low on the mouse. Holy shit. Like, almost unplayably low by default. It's not nom. Gotta be, like, here. Okay, that's better. I like my mouse sensitivity on games often maxed out. Is that weird? I like it really sensitive. Get dressed, grab backpack, and flashlight. Well, here's my backpack. And here's my flashlight. So nom. I don't need to use the bathroom, but you do need to get dressed. So where do you keep your clothes, sir? There we go. I think that's everything. Alright, let's have a look what we got here. Alright, I think we're ready to head out. Let's go. I would like to thank our wonderful, fantastic, beautiful Patreon supporter, Old Abe, for bringing you this video. Thank you so much, Old Abe. You amazing, I'm kidding you. If you want to be
white beard and his crooked staff, he tramps along with the folks all left with a twinkle in his eye as he passes them by. The old man of the mountain, long white beard and his crooked staff, he tramps along with the folks all left with a twinkle in his eye as he passes them by. The old man of the mountain, long white beard and his crooked staff, he tramps along with the folks all left with a twinkle in his eye as he passes them by. The old man of the mountain, long white beard and his crooked staff, he tramps along with the folks all left with a twinkle in his eye as he passes them by. The old man of the mountain. Sleeps with the stars for a tent. For the beast spread a feast when he's hungry. And God charges no man. He'll live as long as old or free and laugh at fools like you and me. Often sigh and wish that I were the old man of the mountain.
Bottom that beat, the rhythm is sweet. And learn to do the crazy cool. Bottom that beat, the rhythm is sweet. And learn to do the crazy cool.
Lazy, the crazy quilt. A little lazy, but what a little. On your
for today. 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 As I go riding merrily along. Jingle jangle. And they sing, oh, ain't you glad you're single? Jingle jangle. And that song ain't so very far from wrong. Jingle jangle. That song ain't so very far from wrong. Jingle jangle.
bad-hearted kid, like I told you.
He sneaked off to go hunting. He wasn't even here. So how could I help him?
And he ran smack into the marshal. Now we've really got our heads in a noose. Suppose the old man's dead when they find him.
If he's dead, he can't talk, can he?
No, it's worse if he's alive. Blast you, Hattie. Can't you do anything right?
You're blaming me?
Who would I blame? I didn't put that marshal on our trail.
It don't matter now who did. What are we gonna do?
We're gonna have to get out of here fast.
Fantastic, brilliant, sexy, just like old Abe. I mean, Pumpkin. Here, the side entry. Make sure you follow us at the links above. They are fantastically numb. Enjoy the rest of the video, guys. This is the Weeping Falls Massacre. Are you sure you want to leave? No. I just came here for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, but okay, we have a flashlight. Doesn't appear to have batteries. A good start. Weeping Falls Orphanage. Wow, what a lovely place this looks. I'm sure it looks much more welcoming other times. The front doors are gated and locked. I can't get in through here. The side entrance by the greenhouse might be open. Let's fucking go. I love a side entrance by a greenhouse. This is not the side entrance by the greenhouse. I knew that, as I've been here many times. I recognize this building from quite a few other games that may have used it as an orphanage, or at least like an insane asylum or something. But this game is free. It's on Steam. No thanks. I think I'll pass, actually, if that's alright with you. I'm not looking after someone else's kid. Jesus fucking Christ. The plank is nailed in the wall. With the right tool, I could pry it free. The door is locked. Remember there being a spare key hidden under a potted plant in the greenhouse. You know, what the fuck is the greenhouse? There's a greenhouse? Is this the greenhouse? It's not green. I'm not even sure it's a house. So it must be in here, so we need to find like a pry tool. Like this crowbar here. Iron crowbar. Fantastic. Boom, boom, boom. Done. Alright, find the potted plant that it's under. GTFO. Not that one. Boom. No, I saw you. How do I... Why can't I take this? I see you. What? Why can't I take the key? Oh, I had to, like, mouse over it in the exact right position, I guess? There we go. There we go. Okay, I don't need that. Okay. Okay, that key was creeping me out a little bit there. It was getting right up in my face. But that's okay. Greenhouse key was used. Hi! Go away. I don't want to fucking look after other people's kids. Like, who let them run around here this late at night? Like, be a parent. Don't let your kids, like, stay up this late, you know? Ooh. Okay, so some kind of puzzle that I have no idea. Nothing happened with this combination. Well, that's fine, because I have no idea what the combination is, as of yet. Hang on. Did someone just, like, vomit over the blackboard, or what? I mean, I understand. I really didn't like school either, but still. It's a bit extreme. Got the common area here, which is padlocked. And that door is locked. So that is the only way forward, is the classroom. So there's got to be a clue in here as to what hideous colors I need to put into this. So the flashlight in this is pretty good in terms of like being able to see. The problem is when you want to see something immediately in front of you because it's too bright. You got to get the balance, you know. You got to get the balance. I'm gonna become like a professional horror game flashlight critiquer. I feel that's like my calling in life at the moment. You know what I mean? I can be like, well, this one, I'd probably give this one, like, a 7. Because, like, if it's here, you can't see shit. But if it's, like, anywhere else in the room, okay, that's reasonable, you know? Like, that's fine. A combination lock is missing a cylinder. I had to find a replacement before I can open it. Ah. Right, I'm gonna look around a little bit more and see if I can find any other clues. Can I read any of these, maybe? Ah. David Foster, director. For Alison Phillips, the teacher. Dear Alison, we received your complaint about children not returning to class from restroom breaks. You'll be happy to hear we will be installing a large metal door with a combination lock leading to the common area. In addition, we have hired a new staff member by the name of John Torrance to patrol the grounds, as well as an escort to children to and from the restroom. Please announce these changes to all the children in your class and let them know punishment will follow to those who do not follow these new protocols. Thank you. Alright. Okay. Well, at least we know the combination now. Green, yellow, red, green, blue. Thanks, kids. Green, yellow, red, green, blue. There we go. We got a key. Huzzah. Teacher's office key. I'm gonna... Oh, I can just move them myself. I mean... I'm gonna be real, ghosts. It would have been nice if you'd just done this for me, you know, considering that you're the ones that put it here in the first place. Did no one teach you to clean up after your mistakes? Huh? Huh? I'm beginning to think those aren't blackboards, by the way. Okay, so we have some butterflies. Very Resident Evil, this kind of stuff. I'm going to say that about everything now, actually. I've decided that every time I pick up anything in a game, I'm also going to reference another game, even if it's nothing like it. Wow, this is really Fatal Frame me. Interesting. Student evaluation form. Teacher, Alison Phillips. Student, Kyle Reed. English B-, Math C, History B+, Science C. Additional notes. Student is easily distracted and seems unmotivated. Also, student is smarter than he lets on, but his grades remain mediocre. Our new staff member, John Torrance, has taken a liking to him. Perhaps he can help steer him in the right direction. John has offered to stay after hours and help tutor and guide Kyle. I've sent the request to Director Foster. I strongly suspect that John Torrance might be a killer. An old cassette player. Find any cassettes, I can listen to them. Is this going to have voice acting? Oh, okay, that's the combination lock thing. Cool. Okay, again, we're having problems with the light here. This game has multiple endings, by the way. Don't expect me to get a good one. Like, I'll try, but, you know. Oh, we found a cassette. Okay, I didn't actually ask you to take that out, but it's whatever. Alright, let's try this cassette and see what happens. Voice acting, please. Select tape. Teacher's log. Play.
Today, John finished the installation of the new metal door and lock leading to the common area. I hope this will keep my students on sneaking off during class. I spoke with Director Foster this morning, and he informed me that John will be staying on the grounds permanently. A room has been made out for him in the cellar. It's good to have an extra set of hands around here, especially at night when most of the staff leave. I have to be honest, though. I don't know why Director Foster has picked John for this task. What is his background or qualifications? I don't have access to his files, so I don't know much about him. I'll ask the other staff. Perhaps they might have heard or know something about him. Anyways, I've got the code for the new combination lock. I wrote it down and hid it behind one of my insect display cases, just in case I forget it.
Okay. I wish there was subtitles on those, but not bad. I don't think there is a subtitle option, unfortunately. Nah, there's not. It's a shame because like subtitles are so needed in every game, really. Like it's super important. I know it takes time because I know how to like I've done like adding subtitles to things and things like that. It is a chore, but it is really fucking helpful. FBE is the code. I'm not gonna say what popped into my head then for some reason. FBE. All right. Why didn't that work? Oh, I've got to try the combination. I'm an idiot. Let's move on. Hi! Stay out the basement. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, kid. Okay, I don't like that. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua. Wow, this place is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, I'm going to be honest with you. Alright, we have a lot of exploration to do now. Alright, I've no idea if there's combat in this. But there's definitely someone who won't shut the fuck up. Alright. Getting a really old school horror vibe from this. This reminds me of like old school sort of like YouTube horror stuff, you know what I mean? When Felix was pumping out videos all the time and stuff like that. This sort of like a little jank but not terrible sort of like thing, you know what I mean? Like this clearly has a lot of effort put into it compared to a lot of games. Like, and you know, so far it's free as well, and so far this is pretty good. But you know what I mean? Like there's like that era of games that have a similar feel, and it just reminds me of that. It reminds me to a time when people actually gave a fuck about me. All right, anyway, let's look around, shall we? I don't see any cassettes around here, but it's hard to tell with the fucking flashlight out. I don't want to miss the cassettes because I'm guessing they're going to have, like, key information in them. Information about keys, I mean by that. Ha 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 ha. But seriously, though, I don't want to miss them if I can possibly avoid doing so. But home, family, where life begins, and a picture of a Native American camp. Wonderful. Alright, let's have a look over here, shall we? It's locked from the other side. Wow, there's a lot of places to go at the moment. They have like these little porta cabin type classrooms here. This is locked by a special locking mechanism. What the fuck is this? Totally normal locking system for a school, I can tell you that. I'm pretty sure this is the slide that eats people in that other game. Classic. Do love a killer slide. Alright, I need the workshare key to open this door. There is a lot of places to go and see. And I am sure to get a bad ending as a result of that. I'll check behind the work shed and then we'll head upstairs, I guess. Doesn't seem to be any immediate way of getting into any of these buildings out here, at least. I know half the comments are going to be like, Minx, you missed that tape. I saw it clearly and you walked straight past it. Yes, I know, okay? I'm an idiot, alright? I don't pay attention. I find it very hard to pay attention to things for more than a few seconds, usually. There's some kind of basement here as well. No lock on the chain. It's been welded shut. I can't open this door unless I find a tool that can cut the chain. Alright. Shut up. For fuck's sake. Everything is locked. Everywhere. Which means I actually have to go sort of looking around. God damn it. Aha. I have found the key. Good news about that is, I found a key. Bad news is I don't know. Oh, it opens this one. Oh, great. Wonderful. Ah, fuck me. That actually got me. Stupid little doll. Alright, another cassette thing in here. Okay. And some kind of puzzle. Well, not puzzle, like code is required there. Drawer is locked and there's no keyhole. Wonderful. Absolutely fucking great. I'm gonna say, I actually see better without the flashlight. I'm gonna have to take some points off the flashlight because it is really, really hard to explore with it on. Like, the light levels are just fucked. To put it politely, the light levels are terrible. Like, they're just really off balance. I'm gonna reduce the flashlight score to a 6. I'm very sorry, but you need to up your flashlight game. Things need to be visible when you look through the flashlight, not so bright that your retinas are removed and seared off. That's my expert opinion. That genuinely got me though. That was actually a good scare. I like the little bubba running away. What the fuck are these of? Interesting. But yeah, this game seems to be very much like a pixel key hunt so far. Not a huge fan of that, but we'll see. Oh god, I keep missing these. I'm an idiot. David Foster, director to Playroom Stuff. Electronic lock has been installed in the desk of the Playroom. While watching the children, please keep your spare key to the work shed and personal belongings locked inside the drawer. The last thing we need is a child getting in their hands on any tools and hurting themselves or another. If for any reason you need to access the second floor and I'm not available, John will have an extra set of keys that you can use. The code to open the drawers is 882519. Okay. Oh, I thought I needed the key card or some shit for that, but oh. Thanks. Eric and Kyle, best friends forever. Thank you. Yeah, don't do that next time, okay? It'd be great if you didn't run off awkwardly. Okay, we got a workshop key, but you also got a cassette, so let's listen to another cassette. Teacher's Log 2.
Looks like I'm stuck doing double duty. The young woman who was supposed to watch the children after class has quit. Unbelievable. It's hard to find good help these days. Speaking of help, I have continued my little investigation of John Torrance, our new hire. The children have taken quite the liking to him. Sometimes he dresses up in a silly bear costume to entertain them. I find it rather tiresome. These children need order and discipline if they have any hopes of being adopted. Not all children have grown close to him, though. One child in particular, Kyle Reed, seems afraid of him. John offered to be his mentor and help him with his struggling grades. But so far Kyle seems immune to his charm. Another thing that bothers me about John is his personality. He is very distant and short with other staff, almost to a point of being disrespectful. He seems to only open up to the children. It's all very confusing.
Sorry, my mum decided to text me during that, as you could hear. My mum likes to relay her every move to me throughout the day. In case, I forget, apparently. Real talk, I love my mum, but she does text me a hell of a lot. All right, anyway, let's go to this door over here. Now we have the key for this. And let's have a look around. I've got a horrible feeling we're going to be dealing with, like, a killer in a bear suit if we actually have to fight a killer. All right, there's tape things in every room. Oh, well, there's another tape. We'll listen to that in a second. I do quite like the tapes. Like, for an indie game, actually bothering to record the lifelines, the voice lines and stuff is actually pretty cool. Let's listen to this immediately. Maintenance worker log. Okay.
Someone has been messing around in my tool shed after hours. I've often returned in the morning to my tools scattered or missing. I don't know why they just don't ask me to borrow what they need. The only people who have a key to the shed other than myself at the moment are Allison, Director Foster, and John. I know Allison sometimes needs extra tools for the greenhouse, but she always returns what she uses. Director Foster leaves at night, so it can't be him. That leaves John. But what could he be doing at night that requires my tools? I'm not one to start throwing accusations around, but I will bring up my concerns to Director Foster. We can't have random tools going unaccounted for with the children around. Someone could get hurt.
Okay, so that's where they installed the lock here. But what was he doing with the tools? Other than dismembering children, obviously. Or making a bear suit, hmm? In all seriousness now, we need to get somewhere. We need to go upstairs now somewhere, I think, because the other tape mentioned the other note, sorry, mentioned going upstairs, right? But how the fuck are we gonna get up there? Anything down here, maybe? Ooh. Weeping Falls Massacre. Do not play. Secret cassette tape found. Okay. I guess we should have a listen to that. Sounds. Looks like it's probably pretty important. Still didn't find anything in the garage yet, but there's got to be something in here, right? Like tools. Oh my god, I can just hit the bolt cutters. Okay, we'll listen to the tape and we can open the basement with the bolt cutters. Fantastic. All right, let's listen. What is this? Pretty sure that was an excerpt from Disney's Frozen. Very risky to put something like that in a game, you know, in copyright and all that. Anyway, moving on. We should use the bolt cutters here. And we can go down into the basement. Wonderful. What the? This is a brand new flashlight. That might mean something really bad is down here. Oh, I mean, there's something bad everywhere. There's another tape. Another cursed tape. I'm glad they're neon red, otherwise I would probably just miss them every time, if I'm honest with you.
And the herd casts itself in flesh to besiege, and seeks to sate its unending hunger by swallowing the souls of the living, which are then lost unto the shifting pits of Kanda, where the spheres of Yog-Sothoth steal those who have opened the gate unprepared, while the things that were and shall be again turn their bodies unto vassal shells for themselves. Catra Emistrobin, Esanta Tandi Manon, Nancy's, Ohan Onsapar, Samantha Rosa, Kanda, Kanda, Kanda.
Well, that was lovely. The door is chained shut. Well, can't I just cut the chain? I don't like this. Like, I'm actually getting a little bit nervous and uncomfortable, which I guess is the point. The cabinet is locked with a keypad. Before we go into that wonderful little adorable hole over there, I am scared something's gonna, like, just run at me suddenly in the dark, you know what I mean? Like, suddenly a fucking dude in the bear costume with a fucking chainsaw's gonna run at me, chanting in some ancient Lovecraftian tongue. Lovecraftian tongue. 59. Okay, it's a code. A small statue of a lion's body. There is a locking mechanism where the head should be. 63. Well, there's our bear. There's our bear killer. 63. 26. 59. Oh, this is nasty. Where did Bear Chan go? It's not possible. He hates the light. Second floor key. An old gramophone. What's it doing down here? If I find any vinyl records, I can play them on this. An old VHS player. Yes, I would love to save the game. Is that the first save? Kyle's Teddy. Can he kill me? Kyle, he seems terrified. I have to find a way to help him. Oh no, what the fuck is this shit? There we go. I'm not quite sure what I did there, but okay. What have I got here? Okay, Jesus Christ. Alright, Kyle, I'll come back for you in a minute, alright? The fact the game has saving makes me 100% sure that something bad's gonna happen as I leave this place. I wish I knew what I just picked up. Lion crest piece. Okay, so we need the other half. Alright, got it. Oh, hi, Bear. How's it going? Holy shit! Not gonna lie, that is not what I expected. But it was pretty cool. Where the fuck do I go? He's like right on my ass. Oh, I'm deaded. Let's load save. Oh, Jesus. One hit kill. Okay. You know how I feel about one hit kills in games, guys. You guys know how I feel about this. Alright. We'll give this another shot. I'm wondering if the light thing is a reference to him or the kid. Its fucking hands is so fucking weird. Okay. It doesn't like the light. Also, sometimes it appears to not give a fuck that it doesn't like the light. Was this door open before? Alright, he's gone. At least for now. Jesus Christ. I can hear his fucking huge feet, though, walking around. Hard to tell exactly where he is, if I'm honest with you. We got like a chess game puzzle here. If he comes upstairs, I'm fucked, by the way. Like, completely fucked. Although I don't know if he wanders up here of his own accord, if that makes sense. Like, he was chasing me last time. I don't see any notes this time. We haven't got a clue here for this, so let's just look around a little bit more, okay? Oh, hang on, there's this. Oh, it's one of these again. Okay, we got a severed teddy bear head. Bear part. Alright, I don't think this goes in here, but we did find something at least. I really hope he doesn't come up here. The door's been welded shut with metal brackets. I need something that can melt through it. Okay, so we need like a flamethrower or some shit. Looks like I can look around here a little bit now without consequences for my actions. Where is Teddy Bear? I don't see him down there. Which is a little bit concerning, I'm not gonna lie. Alright. This door is locked and there's no obvious way in. I'm scared about... Fuck. I think he's below me. The problem is if you come to a room like this, you're just dead. Like there's if he comes in here, there's no way out. It's a dead end. So you're just fucked. Okay, we got another cassette. I hope another one of these. Okay, another bear part. I think he's under me. That glitched, by the way, unfortunately for me. He is 100% under me. Are you fucking kidding me? I think this is broken, guys. God damn it. Alright, I guess I'll be right back. I'm gonna have to die and do all that bit again. God damn it. Alright, so I got both bear parts again. To be fair, it only took a second. Let's listen to this new tape as well, like we got from the soda machine. I just hope he doesn't come in and kill us while I'm doing it.
Is a gateway to hell. Its pages constitute a way to summon forces of evil into our earthly realm. Know that, in ancient times, there were those known as the Dark Ones, neither demon nor fully human. They created this book as a weapon against humanity. These pages were cut from the bodies of the damned, upon which the Dark Ones inked their passages in human blood. Passages that contain the power to create portals, connecting our world to the underworld, where evil resides. The Dark Ones use this book to hold power over all mankind.
Lovely. Beautiful. Alright. Anything on the bottom of this? 143279. I think that says 2. It's very hard to tell, right? 143279. I'll try that. Like, this room's okay if he comes in. Right, that's for the chess puzzle. Kind of the cassette as well. I wish this game had more saves so I could just save now in case there's a glitch or something.
Kyle Reed has become quite a handful. Ever since his best friend Eric was adopted, he rapidly burst out in fits of anger followed by periods of withdrawal. The only thing that seems to calm it down is an old teddy bear. The teddy bear is the only thing that was found with him when his mother abandoned him at the front gates of the orphanage when he was just a baby. It's not healthy for a child in his early teens to still be attached to a stuffed animal. But for now, I think it's important for his mental and emotional well-being. If he continues down this path, he will face increasingly harsh punishment for his misbehavior. I will continue monitoring him. We'll report back to Director Foster.
Okay, so we need to rebuild the teddy bear and bring it to the kid in the basement, which I kind of figured out already anyway. A5. D5. B4. F4. H6. B6. Nurse's station key. Well, we know what that is. Just have to not get killed by a giant killer bear on the way to the nurse's station. Everything should be fine. This would be a good room to have a save point in, actually. You know? It'd be good. Be great. Nurse Kelly Rubin, subject missing medication. I'm filing this report with much concern. Some of the sedatives used to calm the children who have anxiety or trouble sleeping have gone missing. There is evidence the lock on my door has been tampered with. I'm requesting that John Torrance install one of the new number padlocks on the medication locker. If this persists, I will have to notify the authorities. I could lose my nursing license over this. Sorry, loose my nursing license. Alright, some kind of puzzle with the clock. A locked box. Hello? Not gonna lie, that's not what I expected to be on the other side of that door, to be honest with you. Was he hip thrusting? Was he doing a Fortnite dance? Kids love those Fortnite dances, oh my god. Oh, 9 p.m. on the clock, alright. I think he's below me. This is freaking me out a lot, just hearing his little Pete's going. Why didn't that work? That's right. That's right. So why isn't this working? I literally have said it right. Unless it's this way around, but I doubt it. Fuck it, let's try that. I mean, I guess it could be any of these, right? Big hand down. It could be anything. There we go. We got a key. What did we get this time? A small key. Well, it's not for this. What else was locked? Was anything else locked around here? I'm not sure it was, you know. Aha. Another cassette. This will probably give us the code. Nurse's tape.
I'm hiding this tape as a record just in case anything happens to me. I found out who has been stealing medication from my office when I'm not here. It's John Torrance. After he installed the new keypad lock on the medication locker, I asked him to set the combination to my birthday. Only he and I knew this, and within days more medication had gone missing. It has to be him. I fear I am in danger as well as the children. Some of them have come into the office with bruising on their bodies. One child, Carl Reed, has bruising on his neck and wrist, which suggests he's been restrained. Director Foster has not been in his office for the past week. No one knows where he is. John Torrance is an animal. He must be stopped.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised by this shocking revelation. 021154 for the birthday. Alright, we got the body. And a head and an arm. We have nowhere left to go now, though, right? Like, where the fuck are we gonna go? We didn't get a new key for a new area. So where is the next path? I missed this. It's the other half of that, which must go in the weird lock outside. But now we have to contend with the bear. Oh, there's the bear. I actually want you to come in here, because I want to get down to the basement and save. Go, 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 go. We'll go down here and save. Okay. I'm in trouble. Fuck you, game. Suck a dick. Alright, he saw me from fucking miles across the fucking room that time. Alright, these must go here. Okay, excellent. I wish this would close. I wish the doors would close behind me. You know, like normal doors. as opposed to constantly staying open and letting killer bears into the room. That would be on my list of things I really wished. Although that said, I'm not sure he patrols all the way up here. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but... Nothing in here that's immediately catching my attention. To grab. Stupid bear. At least I'm so glad I got that save off. That would have been like the worst thing ever, having to do all that again. Okay. We got a lullaby. For the gramophone. Which I'm assuming we're going to need to relax the kid in the basement. Come on. Alright, another part of the bear. One sec, guys. Gotta kill myself. My number one advice to this developer, right, is if you're gonna have... let's be honest, these are game-breaking glitches. Like, they make the game forced to be restart forcibly every time they happen, and they've happened multiple times. You need to have saves, auto-saves, everywhere. You can't have limited saves in a game that's gonna break. You just can't. Now, I'm lucky. Because I saved regularly after the first time this happened. But it's very, very easy for that just to break. It just seems random if that breaks or not. Oh, Jesus, it's a church. You scared the shit out of me. Scared the shit out of by the Virgin Mary. Alright, got another secret cassette tape. I'm guessing the amount of those we find perhaps can affect the ending. Which would make sense, right? Well, let's listen to it as we are here. Hidden tape 3. Let's go. Is this a normal church service? I have no idea. I feel this is a genuine recording of a church service, like 100%, like a royalty-free fucking thing that they've got or some shit. Interesting. And by interesting, I mean, that was horrible. There's a button I saw around here, right? No idea what this is for. I guess I have to press them in a certain order, probably. I'll come back to you in a second. I'm just gonna double check I haven't missed anything in this area. I don't think I did, but better safe than sorry. But yeah, I mean, I have been to church services occasionally in my life, but as a complete non-believer in any sort of, like, spiritual stuff heathen, I find that was just terrifying, if I'm honest with you. Like, that genuinely creeps me out. The true horror for me is religion. Oh, yeah. Thank God for that. At least I got to have a nice shit. Why do they all make flushing sound? I know, it's the plug. Minx, that's actually the plug sound. It's not... Ah, there's another one. Can't wait for this one to break, so I have to reload. Please. Be right back. Oh my god. Guys, after half an hour of constantly opening those two boxes, I finally got them to open together and get me the inside. There is major game-breaking bugs in this game that render it almost unplayable, I'm gonna be honest with you. 30 minutes just opening those two boxes is bullshit. If I die here, I'm gonna be so fucking mad. Like, I will be... Yes. Okay, cool. I managed to save. I don't care about anything else right now. I got a save off with those two boxes open. I can't believe that took 30 minutes. I can't believe I just spent 30 minutes opening these stupid fucking boxes. Holy shit. They just don't open half the time they just reseal themselves and you can't look at the thing to get it out the box. It's unbelievable, actually. Like, I know this is free, and I'm assuming this was done by one person, but holy shit, you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. It's really, really bad. Alright, anyway, I'm gonna cut here, listen to the tape again in the church, unfortunately for me, and try and figure out what the fuck we need to do here with this wonderful church puzzle. It probably wasn't the... There we go. We managed to open this. We got the lion's head thing for the basement, another part of the bear, and a fucking flamethrower to open the thing on the top floor. Excellent. I'm so glad I didn't have to open another box to get another bear part, otherwise I would have lost my fucking mind. Holy shit. Alright, anyway. Let us head. Do I risk going to save? Alright, we got the blowtorch. We go up here. We do the blowtorch stuff. We get into this office. I think I've got all the shit I need for the basement now. Alright, excellent. I'm not worried. I've still yet to see him go upstairs, so I'm not particularly worried about that happening. So let's look through all this shit here. Hopefully uninterrupted. I still can't go over the box stuff. If I see another one of those boxes, I'm gonna die. Oh, hi! Oh, you ready for a scare? Hello, Mr. Director. Oh my god, really? We're fine. Nothing bad happened. Alright. We got some kind of disgusting book. Wonderful. Got some kind of crest. We got a load of shit that I have no idea where it goes at this point. Oh, a key. Fire escape key. I feel like there should at least be another cassette in here somewhere, right? Like, if I feel like that's this fight. I've got to get better at doing thumbnails. Oh, this is John Torrance? That's his ID card? Holy shit. Oh, I wish I could get a better angle, like jump on the desk and look in his face. Ah, well, here's one of the secret tapes. Tapes. Confession, this one's called. Wonderful. Oh, I missed the tape somewhere. Interesting. Well, listen to this one.
The preparations are complete. I will soon ascend and be with the Dark Ones. John will carry out the sacrifices that must be made. The blood of the pure must be spilled. John believes he will join me in my ascension, but he is nothing more than a means to an end. I took him under my wing with promises of wealth, power, and eternal life. He was hired here to first get close to the children, then to extract suffering from them by any means necessary. And while some of the staff might begin to catch on to him, they will never suspect me pulling the strings behind the scenes. He is the perfect scapegoat, and his corrupted soul combined with the soul of Kyle Reed of which I selected to endure the harshest of suffering, should be more than enough to fuel the dark ritual. But to be sure, I have ordered John to kill as many children and staff as he can. On the day of days, I leave this cassette so that others may know what will truly happen here, and know that nothing could be done to stop it.
Well, that was fucked up. So the head of the orphanage was the one behind everything, and even though John was clearly a fucking psycho, he manipulated John into doing it to use him as a scapegoat. Though, why would you do that, right? And then fucking... and then leave a confession? Like, because that just doesn't absolve him, obviously, because he's still a fucking lunatic, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not the ideal situation, in my opinion, to, like, conceal. Is there anything else around here? I feel like I'm missing some things. We got the fire escape key. We got all the shit for the basement, which I'm wondering if that's where we were meant to go first, by the way. Which if that's the case, that's fine. Just gonna have a little more look around quickly in case I did miss something. Oh, I never went in this end room here, right? What the fuck is this? This is new. Oh, well, apparently that's what the fire escape key is for. Oh, that's how we get out. All right, we're not down here yet, though. We're not down here yet. We gotta go in the basement and do a few more things. Right, there's our exit, though, for later on. Wherever the fuck the bear is now, anyway. We need to get into the basement. Don't think he's here. Right, where do we build the bear? Teddy will not hunt while the lullaby is playing. I mean, that's great and everything, but what does that achieve? Okay, I think I must have all the bear parts now, right? Surely. But where do I put the bear together? Oh, here, sewing machine. I got the bear. Alright. No worries. Give me the last tape. Are you fucking kidding me? Teddy will bother you no longer. Okay. We're missing one tape. I'm gonna have a little look around, see if I can find it. But I'm not gonna, like, piss myself to get out of here, if I'm honest with you. Because we could just leave now and we're done. I guess you could have left without doing any of that, though. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to give in the bay. You could have just fucked off down the fire escape, like, immediately. Anyway, I'll have a little look around, but I'm not super optimistic. Well, I've been wandering around for a while, guys, and I genuinely can't find out where to go. And I feel like we're going to get a good ending because we exercised the bear and we got evidence that this has happened. So let's get out of here and see what happens. And if we get a good ending, that's great. If not, we die. Horribly. With a spike up our bottom. I like saying that. It's from Blackadder. A lot of things I've referenced are from Blackadder, and most people don't know that, but it's great. Sure. Let's go.
Thank you, Eric. I'm free now.
Did we do good? Did we do good? Please say we did good. Instead of just ruining, like, things and making things more fucked up. Eric Stahl fled the orphanage with everything he found. He decided to leak what he could to WF Herald, I guess a newspaper. With overwhelming evidence and demand from the locals, the police department was forced to reopen the Weeping Falls massacre case. While the whereabouts of John Torrance and Director Foster are still unknown, Eric takes solace in the fact that he was able to help the spirit of his childhood friend Kyle find peace. He now feels the door is closed on this dark chapter of his life. There we go. Isn't that nice? Isn't that lovely? I have very mixed feelings about this, but very quickly, before we do anything else, I'm going to just boot the game up again, then immediately leave in my car and see what ending we get, because I think that will be worth just to see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, just drive up and then just leave. Let's see what happens. Alright, we're just going to leave in the car now. Oh. I guess it remembers the fact that I was there? That's funny. Alright, anyway, actual thoughts now. I really enjoyed this towards the end, but the game-breaking bugs with those stupid boxes was so frustrating, it was unbelievable. I wasted at least 30 minutes here just opening boxes constantly to try and get one where I could actually see the item inside. That said, overall, it's not bad, especially for a free game made by a very small team, or maybe even one person, I think it says here in the credits. But yeah, just needs a little bit more work in terms of like those boxes, or just remove the boxes over altogether and just have the teddy bear parts. That would make the game at least 1,000,000 times more enjoyable. But I believe anyway that this was all done by one person, which is pretty fucking amazing, it looks like. So yeah, not a bad little game. That was the Weeping Falls Massacre. I hope you enjoyed it, and we're back soon for more spooky horror games on this channel. If you enjoy the content here, consider subscribing to our Patreon. There's lots of cool stuff there, including some more exclusive long plays coming up exclusively there. There's also a back catalogue of games there as well that you can check out for those full playthroughs and other cool stuff. So check it out, link in the description, get involved in the community, and be a super nomkin. See you guys later. Bye for now.